And each speaker will be given 2 minutes with the opportunity to speak once. So if anyone in the public would like to comment at this time, please raise your hand and Cass will promote you. Please leave your hand up when you are promoted so that I could call on you. And council members, please lower your hands. Great, Hannah?
Hello, my name is Hannah Regan. I am the current OSAC chair. I just wanted to come tonight to let council and everyone who is here know that tomorrow I will be going to Kirkhoff to conduct an audit of all student offices. This audit is based off of the student office guidelines. It just deals with cleanliness, space utilization, things of that manner. This audit will not impact our considerations for allocation in the winter, barring any major infractions. So that will be happening tomorrow. I will be sending out to all student organizations the results of their audit, just so that they are aware, and there will be pictures included, just so that they can see the current state of their office as well. In the next about 3 weeks, all student offices are going to be cleaned by a crew, which includes vacuuming, cleaning and repairing of windows, things of that sort. It also means that some items in the office, items which are visibly broken, unusable, or in major disrepair, may be thrown away. If you have any questions or concerns about items in your office, please email me at osac@asucla.ucla.edu. I'll put the email in the chat before I go. To either set up an appointment to visit your office before cleaning begins, so that you can take out any items you're concerned about or label them as not trash. And if you have any other, please do that by this Friday, so that we have enough time to make sure you can get in before cleaning starts. And if you have any other questions, comments, or concerns about the audit, about cleaning or space on campus in general, outside of whether or not things will reopen, my guess is as good as yours at this point. I pass along everything I know as soon as I know it. Please email me at osac@asucla.ucla.edu. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Hannah. We appreciate you coming. Great. Okay. Anyone has any other public comment? Going once, going twice. Seeing as there is no more public comment, we will be ending public comment at 7:08 p.m. Great. We're moving straight into funding. Capital contingency.
I just promoted Jenny.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Hi, sorry, I don't know how long that took. My internet is not great. But for this week, we only allocated funding for one event. We allocated, total amount is $0 to USAC entities and then $990.21 to non-USAC entities. I just wanted to bring to council this and then also ask your thoughts on this being a hybrid event. So the undergraduate students will be operating virtually, but the doctors and grad students will be going to these clinics in person. I chose to allocate still because the undergrads will be virtual, but I am not sure what council's stance is on in-person events and funding in-person events yet. So would love to hear your thoughts on that as well.
Awesome, Jenny. I think it's a good time to have can we have a discussion about this at this time, Josh?
Yes, you may. You may.
Okay, yeah. So I know that this was a similar thing that came up last year. Jenny, do you know like the context? Could you maybe give a bit more context as to what the event is for?
Yeah, definitely. Sorry, I should provide that. So It's the mobile clinic project at UCLA. So they specifically provide street side clinics for individuals that are unhoused. And so this event will be like providing transportation, phones, and also medical care to anyone on the streets, particularly those affected by COVID. And so the undergraduates are mostly there to like gather information and data. So that's why they can do things over Zoom. But the graduate students and the doctors will be on site and they will be performing actual checkups for specific patients. And so that's why it's a little difficult to ask them to do that virtually, because by the nature of that, they do have to be in person.
Okay, awesome. Would love to hear council's thoughts. I think my own perspective is that, given that they are going to be assisting the LA community that is affected by COVID, I think that that is something to definitely think about. In this case, I would love to hear everyone else's thoughts though. Emily, and then Tay.
I agree with you, Breeze. I think that it's definitely an essential service that they're offering a very vulnerable community at this time, especially when I don't see how, I mean, technically Zoom, it's possible, but not as good of healthcare being on, if it were to be on Zoom. So I think an in-person event makes sense, although I'm not entirely sure what happened last year with regard to like in-person events, but I know there was some sort of issue that came up.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Last year, it was for an event that I mean, obviously there's a Delta variant right now, right? But I think last year it was for an event that was not necessarily a basic needs, whereas this I think is a basic needs, and it kind of necessitates, right? Especially as UCLA promotes a lot of the times helping out vulnerable communities in LA. I think that is my own perspective, because last year's event was for a convention, I want to say. And, that convention, I don't think, it wasn't a must, you could go without going to a convention, whereas like people who are dying, vulnerable communities, that's different. I don't know. Jessica?
Yeah, I just wanted to throw in a little bit of context too. I think previous issues with funding was more so due to UCLA travel policy and the fact that USA funds do need to adhere to any UCLA campus policies. So that was more of the issue there with not being able to provide funding, because at the time the campus was not permitting any non-essential travel and you needed special permission to do so. So I think that's also just something to consider. This seems like a different scenario that none of the students are traveling there, at least the undergrads. And then also to consider, I believe that now where we're at, those specific guidances from UCLA have been lifted as of recently with things reopening and restrictions kind of lessening. So I just wanted to throw that out there too for you all to consider. It's mainly just making sure that you're adhering to UCLA policies with their funding. So if there's any question of that portion, we can definitely work with Vong to like look into what policy is in question. But to my knowledge, it sounds like at the surface that this would be okay to fund.
George?
Jessica brought up all the points. I would definitely push you and urge you all to look at the policies right now that the university has implemented and changed, it has done a lot.
Haley, then Jenny.
Yeah, just gonna kind of echo what's been said. I think it is appropriate in this instance to allow like the funding to go through for this, especially considering that the people like on site are vaccinated because they're doctors and like med students. And so just keeping that in consideration.
Jenny?
just kind of going off of what Jessica was saying, I was wondering if council has decided on whether or not they are allocating for our in-person events this summer, or if it is only for like essential events, because I have had several student groups ask me, and UCLA has revised their guidelines to be more lenient and allow events on campus without needing prior approval. So I'm wondering if that's also, if I'm able to extend funding for in-person retreats or in-person gatherings this summer.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that right now, well, at least in the meetings I've been in recently, people are kind of worried that, with the Delta variant becoming an issue, that we might have to go, but I don't know. Maybe it's something that George has his hands up. So I'll call on George, and then I don't know if Josh or Jessica have more context.
Definitely my fault. My hand should not be up.
Awesome.
Yeah, I could jump in, Breeze. So everything right now, I think we're going to be fully in person in September. The university is still accepting on a case-by-case basis, to my understanding. So we'd still have to make the request. You would need to still get the sole advisor's approval at this moment in time to do anything in person on campus. The travel restriction is still in place until September, and then they're going to make additional, it's going to be need-based travel only at this moment in time. So I can check and Orlando or Fernando or Jessica, if you have any additional, please feel free to jump in, but I think that's where we're at this point. So that was one of the questions that I also had is if this group has already received approval from their sole advisor to be able to host an on-campus event. And if they've gotten approval, great. That does not mean USAC has to fund. That is up to you if you choose to fund, but it is a bit of Pandora's box, which we've experienced a little bit last year, that once you approve one, other groups will come forward, and you do need to be consistent in your process.
Josh, you're correct. Right now, groups are required to still run this through their sole advisor. Unfortunately, I do not advise mobile clinics, so I can't comment on what has or has not happened. But I would definitely want to check in with that to see what the sole advisor has advised and what they may or may not have approved.
Awesome. Prom?
Yeah, I wanted to ask a question. I guess it kind of relates to the mobile clinics, but, and correct me if anyone can correct me if I'm wrong, but like folks can host things in person off campus without prior approval, right? Is that correct?
Yes and no. If the student organization is requesting funding, the sole advisor approves that funding. So a student group, once they apply for it, then they bring in sole, and sole then has the ability to approve or deny that proposal.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Okay, so I don't really know where we go from here, Josh. Jenny, maybe we can set up a meeting, or maybe with Jessica. I don't know if that's something we can do to figure that out.
So remember, money does not get approved until council votes. So what I would want to do, if it's okay with you all, is I want to make sure that this group has followed the proper protocols and has received approval through sole. So I think step number one, if it's okay, Orlando, if you don't mind checking in with the advisor, or Jenny, if you don't mind checking with Orlando to get the name of the advisor for this group and make sure that they got approval to move forward with one, campus is allowing them to do an on-campus event. And two, then you still have to come back and say, do we want to spend undergraduate money on a virtual event where grads get to go? I hope I'm not swinging it in any way. I'm laying out everything. And I think we could vote this in next meeting, unless the money is needed prior to the 2-week meeting deadline. Jenny, any thoughts on when this conference is taking place?
So this event is happening on August 4th. So
Perfect.
that is 3 weeks from now. So we could wait the 2 weeks. I think it is also, I will just quickly note that they will not be on campus. They're going to be on Hollywood Boulevard in LA, and they have several clinics. So there's like 4 clinics running through all of August. And if any of you want to look at the application, that's also available for you. Just let me know. And I can also send you the full application that the group has sent. But definitely, Josh, I can connect with the group, ask them if they've talked to their Soul advisor, and also talk to Orlando to see if they've contacted Soul.
That would be my recommendation before it gets voted in. What I don't want to happen is we vote it in and then have to take it back.
Right.
Does that make sense? Because that will then create problems on multiple layers.
Yeah. Thank you for helping us with that situation, Josh. Yeah, that would be really helpful, Jenny. And if you need any assistance with any of that, feel free to CC me. Awesome. Do we have it? That was for capital contingency, correct?
That was for capital contingency, we have no allocations. OSAC is handling most of that at this moment. This is for contingency programming.
Okay, awesome. In that case, then we can just move straight into the
Please,
next.
I think Natalia might have had a question.
Oh yeah, I just kind of wanted to echo what Josh was saying and sort of ask what the specifics are in terms of the items that we're funding, because it was said that, you know, for undergrads it is a virtual event, right? So are we funding the travel costs for this event to run? So essentially the travel costs for grad students, or are we funding like something that's virtual, like Zoom or whatever it may be?
Yeah, that's a great question. So let me pull up the breakdown, but essentially it would be one of the big things is making the clinic accessible to unhoused people in the area. And so that will be done by providing prepaid phones, which will allow them to do follow-ups with all of the patients. And then also big blue bus passes as transportation. So this actually will specifically be benefiting the recipients of care, which is unhoused rather than grads or undergrads. So there is $125 in transportation and then $865 in supplies. And so supplies are stuff that will be specifically used at the clinic, I believe, yes.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jenny. Great. Okay. And like I said, Jenny, if you need any support, thank you so much. I know you just came into this role too, so we appreciate you so much. Awesome. Okay. AR ARC. I'm like ARCF ARC. Let me just edit that. ARC allocations prom.
Oh, I came a little late and I meant to strike it, but you guys were already on public comment, so.
Oh, no worries. Great. Let's go ahead and strike that. Great. Moving on to special presentations. Miss Jane, you have the floor.
Hi, can you promote Kiki Wong cast? Kiki is one of the head of zero waste at UCLA, and she is just going to give us a presentation about zero waste and what's up with that. So yeah. Kiki, you have.
Hi everyone, thank you for having me tonight. I wanted to introduce myself before I dive straight into my presentation. My name is Kiki Wong. I'm the Zero Waste Manager for the campus, and I'm really honored to be in your company today to talk about what I do, what UCLA is doing about zero waste, and how the council can potentially look into ways to collaborate or be more involved or just work with me to reach out to the broader community. So I'm going to turn off my video for the most part so that you can focus on the presentation. I muted myself instead, yikes. If you have any questions at any point in time, please feel free to put in the chat or email me directly. Okay, so just to give some background about the zero waste and waste in general, we are in a global waste crisis. There is no way in terms of the waste that we toss out. 9.1 billion tons of plastic has been created since large-scale production started in the 1950s. And statistics continually show that nationwide, only about 9 to 10% is actually recycled and turned to something new. That means the remaining of these items, the materials, they are either incinerated, meaning they're burned, they're landfilled, or they're littered somewhere in the environment. So this is really problematic because production of these plastic products requires oil extraction and manufacturing, which has a huge impact on the communities of where these refineries are based at, where they're drilled, etc. It's actually very disproportionate how it affects these communities. It really affects the low-income people of color, and it leaves long-lasting impacts, microplastics, littering, health issues, all these things. So this waste doesn't include statistics on fast fashion, electronics, food, toxics, etc. That's a whole nother topic, but just want to give you, again, context. So a lot of people also ask me, like, what's going on? You heard that certain countries have stopped accepting materials from being imported. So this was not anything new. China and many Southeastern countries have actually been giving the Western countries warnings that it's being contaminated, whatever plastic's being brought over is no good, low quality. So it's actually since 2013, and we're all the way at 2021 now. So between the 2013 and 2019, a lot of different crackdowns, different trying to permitting. I won't go too into detail because this is a lot of very industry heavy information, but I did send out the link to the PDF to Jane that you can all read at your own time, but here's a source if you want to follow up at a later time. So when we talk about waste, I want you all to think about the true cost. It's more than just taking out, from your apartment, from your house and tossing it into the dumpster. I want you to consider these different factors: the extraction and production of goods and the loss of non-recovered raw materials. So think about where and how these materials are sourced. Is it from fair labor or lack thereof? And the other forms of waste. So I mentioned food, technology, furniture, textiles, and then there's also the waste of water and energy. The cost of transporting, handling, sorting, and the actual disposal of waste. So consider the money that's spent to dispose of the waste that's generated, potential job creation through a circular economy or not. Consider the byproducts of transportation and the space that's occupied by these disposal sites and where these disposal sites are. What are the demographics? Also consider that not all waste disposal programs are the same across the world. We have landfills in California. There are a few incinerators left, but in other parts of the country, they're burning it in their backyard, they're dumping it in the river. It's not always the same across this nation, and let alone the world. And lastly, I want you to think about the impact on human health and the environment. So consider the environmental, social justice, as disposal sites and processing sites, again, are disproportionately located near low-income BIPOC communities, and consider the risks to the waste system, to the human health and biospheres. At the end of the day, waste is a human rights, it's a public health, it's a climate change, and it's an environmental issue. So it all connects. I have a slew of photos here. So from top left going clockwise, this is a photo of a Southern California beach in 2019 after a rainstorm washed everything down to the shore. The graphical representation of bioaccumulation, how microplastics and plastics end up in our food stock and back into our bodies. How pristine areas like Lake Tahoe in Northern California has also been infiltrated by single-use disposables. Lots of studies on the research of how landfills have affected us and the environment, and then a graphical representation of all the landfills that are actually in the United States, with the red dots being ones that are still open and the green dots still being closed. And the bigger the dot, the bigger the landfill. So waste is all around us. It's taken for granted because it's a lot of out of sight, out of mind, but really want to focus on this issue. So why are we talking about zero waste? Why do we have an initiative? Zero waste really means that we are recreating a system so that the people and environment are designed into consideration from the start. So it's a circular economy because in a true zero waste aspect, nothing is being lost, nothing is designed poorly so that we don't lose anything in the process. So for example, if we have a aluminum can, we can design it so that it's sourced from recycled aluminum, and we have a good collection system so that it ends back to the manufacturers, and we make sure that these manufacturers have a safe working environment for the people, and that these laws are supporting this process. So the government is supporting the industry, and it's supporting the people, and it's supporting the environment. Everything is circular so that it's not impacting anybody by any means. I just want to leave that graphic on the right for your consideration, the top 10 worst plastic polluters across the world. So some big name brands there, they create a lot of great materials that we have in our daily lives, but they haven't quite taken the responsibility to really make sure that it's a circular economy, that they have some sort of extended producer responsibility to take back what they create and make sure that it doesn't end up in an environment or in a community. So just want you to think about that. Not so fun facts. I'll just talk about a few of them, but again, you can just read what's listed here. And also these are all hyperlinked if you want the research, but takeout orders, probably much higher now, but it takes about I'm assuming 300,000 tons of plastic waste in a year that enters our ocean. You're probably eating a credit card's worth of plastic every week through the microplastics that's broken down into our air, our water, our food, our everything. 700 million metric tons globally burned or dumped as plastic annually. Oil extractions, again, posing major health risks, which includes respiratory diseases, so like your lungs, your breathing functions, your organ malfunctions, creates cancer, birth defects, and more. And then food waste accounts for 56% of our landfill waste. And then methane, which is generated from organic matter, is a greenhouse gas that's 84 times more potent than carbon dioxide. So not so fun facts, but it's all true. And that's why we're gonna go towards more of a local approach in what I'm doing, what we're doing here, and how you can be involved. So you all are familiar with campus. You probably heard some statistics about this during orientation, but we're 419 acres, really dense for our university. Before the pandemic, we had about 80,000 people coming onto campus every day. That includes students, staff, faculty, visitors, sporting events, conferences, you name it. We have 42,000 plus applicants for students, but 42,000 students with the highest applicant rate in the country. So people want to be here. And we are the #1 public university in the world. So background context, we are essentially run as a small city, a very small, unique city with a lot of different functions. So medical, research, academics, sports, you name it. So what are we doing about zero waste? A lot of you are probably familiar with the zero waste by 2020 goals. And as you all know, we're now in 2021. I have a lot of questions of like, well, what are we doing now? Like we didn't make it to 90%. Does that mean you're just gonna forget about it? No. So I also co-chair the UC Zero Waste Working Group. So all my counterparts across the 10 campuses, we actually looked at the policy and revised it over the last summer, because 90% diversion doesn't tell you the whole story. You can try to recycle away and compost away, but that doesn't mean you're doing the right thing. For example, if you have a bunch of food that you're composting, shouldn't we be looking at how come the food is not recovered and redistributed to our local brewing community instead of just being composted? And that's why the new revised policy is, yes, we still have an ultimate goal of 90% waste diversion from landfills, but the next target that we're actually trying to hit with a timeline is 25% waste generation reduction per person by 2025. So that was a mouthful, but you will see it right here over here in text. The next level is 50% reduction per person by 2030. So again, this is more to tell a more holistic story, holistic approach than to just recycle and compost away, because as you saw in the statistic, only really about 10% nationally is being recycled. We have to do better. Aside from UC policies, we have California policies that we abide by. So this is just a list for your reference. That's all listed on our state governing board, so CalRecycle. I'm not going to go through these, but again, just for your reference. Statistically, from 2018 to 2019, UCLA was at the middle of the pack. We had a 57% diversion rate. The system wide was at 63%. So what does that mean for us? This past year, as many people were remotely working and remotely learning from home, we took a lot of different approaches to try to reduce and to provide the infrastructure that was sorely needed across the campus. This whole time, we're also trying to engage with everybody through a new environment. So virtually is a whole nother platform. We started up a social media. We tried doing workshops and webinars live. So one thing that we're really proud of is the single-use plastics policy. This was codified into UCLA policy in October 2020, and this was also codified into the sustainable practices policy that the UC system abides by. So as you can see by this slide here, there's different policy goals with different target dates, but it does aim to eliminate a lot of single-use plastics that we commonly find, such as plastic bags, utensils, straws, and replace them with reusables or fully compostable materials. So we have an implementation guide and presentation available for anybody that's interested, especially this is important information as you're starting to host events again. I know a lot of student organizations are excited to be back and just gather and have banquets and eat together and share that community. So this policy is super important. It's not that we're getting rid of all utensils, but we're finding better alternatives that are healthier for the planet, that leave a much smaller impact and much more. I want to also acknowledge that it's not easy transitioning to zero waste. I know it's a very ambitious goal to have 90% diversion and to reduce per capita, but the truth is so much happens on campus every day. So this is a photo on the top left of me doing a waste audit during finals week of YRL when everybody was on campus studying 24/7. Finding, from the cafe, all these bottles that were not being properly recycled, having, events and it's overflowing because you're just trying to serve people. So there's so much going on campus and it's a lot to tackle. I want to show you again, additional context, how I operate and where I come in. So I'm actually housed in facilities management and we oversee everything that's in orange. So that's all your classroom buildings, your libraries, and I think, let me see, we also have like an elementary school on campus, if y'all didn't know that. But those are my main jurisdiction areas. I act as a liaison to everybody else in the different colors. So purple, housing and hospitality, they kind of have their own programs. Red is for athletics, green is for recreation, and then pink is UCLA Health, which is a completely separate organization as a whole with different standards because of the medical field. And then you see additional buildings in like a light blue and a dark blue. So in these locations, I have no control about what they do, what they say, or what kind of infrastructure they buy. But I do try to align them as much as possible so that we do have a unified message across the campus. And we're actually doing pretty well since I started. There's a lot more alignment in terms of the colors that we're using, the infrastructure that we see, and also the communication that we have. So I would like to ask for ASUC especially, where you all come in, is to advocate for consistency of messaging and prioritization of these programs. Former state affairs, it's really difficult. Again, there's a large campus, a lot of old infrastructure. This is kind of more outdated now, but more of a historical reference, but people will just use buckets as a dumpster, a trash can. They're everywhere. They decide to put them all in the same corner. So the main takeaway from this slide is that waste, compared to all other aspects of sustainability, like for example, energy or water, has the most failure points because each individual has a choice to make in terms of how they sort their waste, what they buy, and is compared to energy. Like, yeah, we can build solar roofing, we can get you the best plumbing system for the toilets, but that's mostly infrastructure wise. But with waste, many different options, many different choices. We acknowledge that there's a lot of systemic choices that we make in terms of what are we supplying to the campus, and what can we purchase. But there's a lot of people who also live here and bring stuff from home, from their apartments or from the residence halls. And depending on where their sustainability literacy is at, it may not be the same as what we're providing on our campus. So there's a disconnect. Let me just take a quick sip of water. Sorry. Okay. So programs at UCLA, again, improving the infrastructure on campus. So you see these down here. While you are all away, we actually put them, this one on the very right, in all buildings on our campus where the facilities management oversees. So when you go to class, you will always have a recycling bin and a compost bin readily available for you. And as you're walking around Bruin Plaza, you'll see the ones in the middle here with the tower stand. Again, always having compost and recycling available for you as you're walking around campus or navigating around campus. So we're also at the higher level, just developing sustainable purchasing contracts with our suppliers. We're partnering with nonprofit organizations such as Human IT to pick up e-waste, or CPO Food Closet to donate food. We're also trying to expand our efforts as we go. Terminology for just, again, reference, I sometimes throw a lot of jargon, but you can review this later on. But those new shiny bins that are in all buildings are called Flexies. These are called Victor Stanleys in the middle of the tower. And then you may also see some of these as you come across campus when you come back. These are from Athens Services. So our contracted waste hauler provides these dumpsters exterior. Again, nothing more than just jargon probably right now for the sake of this presentation. Another really cool thing I was working on is getting rid of all the desk side bins over the past year, so that people need to be aware about what they're throwing away instead of just tossing everything they have next to their little personal trash can. So they will have to actually think about how to sort their waste as they approach one of these bins, because there's images, there's colors, and we're trying to really make this visual cue consistent across campus. So it's done across many other universities, but I think we're one of the first ones to actually get this done across the whole campus. Again, terminology, we installed 30 of these tower stations and 60 of these across campus. So again, trying to really increase accessibility for you all. More information about our campus partners. Human IT accepts our e-waste and also lab equipment. Currently, it's only for campus departments only, but I am working with ASU-CLA to have a student drop-off system at the bookstore, at the Top Shop, and Mouval. Anything, if you guys have any sort of like batteries or printer ink or even e-waste that's personal, you're always welcome to visit the Safe Center that's located permanently at the end of parking structure 8. So they're open Thursday to Saturday from 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. And then lastly, we're also trying to expand our partnership with the Habitat for Humanity Greater Los Angeles with the Restore. So they take furniture and small appliances in good condition, and we're trying to get them connected to our move-out program so that we can reduce the amount of good stuff, perfectly usable stuff that we find at the end of the year. What I also do too is work with our on-campus resources and student organizations such as yourselves. Previously, I have donated goods to USAC FAC, like department supplies. They gave me a bunch of binders and school supplies like notepads, pens, papers, and other things, other goodies. I've also given them to Good Clothes Good People, and also to distribute them to CPO's Basic Needs Office. So if there's something that you think that I can partner with you all with, please let me know. We're always open to ideas. The main issue or restriction that I have is that I can only store so much in my office. I don't have much space here. As you probably figured, UCLA is a very dense campus. There's not much free space. So I can only hold so much that my office can hold, and I can only offload so much at a time. So I can't hold on to things for too long, because there's always a constant ebb and flow of things coming to me in surplus. So your role is to help understand and help your peers understand, what's happening around with waste. I gave you a bunch of information, but sorting your waste is probably the most tangible thing that people first think of is in terms of zero waste. So composting, it's color associated with the color green. It's all food waste. So like bones and eggshells and seashells, and then also like food soil paper products. So if you have like a greasy cardboard pizza box or a paper bag or a napkin, those are all fair game. You can throw them into the compost. You can also throw in paper towels in the compost. Really try to make this initiative known as we were raising awareness about, hey, all our paper towels are compostable, that try to reduce when you can in terms of how much you use. And then also publicizing, if you anytime see a restroom that's kind of like out of service or has not been fixed, please download the 311 app and let us know. We will get to somebody right away, either to clean up a spill, clean a leaky toilet or a leaky faucet. These are important because it kind of rolls back into sustainability overall. When you have a well maintained facility, you're not wasting water, you're not wasting resources. So please go ahead and try to download that app if you're interested. Recycling, a lot of people have questions about this, so we try to summarize it and make it as simple and clear as possible. Hard plastic containers are recyclable. So you have like water bottles, your takeout containers, water cups, mixed paper. So that means like cardboard or newspapers, magazines, notepads, your like cereal boxes, glass containers and jars. So if you have like Perrier, or if you have a bottle of peanut butter, but no ceramics. So if you have plates, those do not belong in the recycling, whether it's broken or not. So, and then lastly, we have metals. So clean metal like cans, catered trays, and then aluminum foil. We do emphasize no food or liquids because that leads to contamination. Just imagine that if you had, for example, a bottle of Fanta orange soda and you spilled it all over your paper and you try to recycle it, when it gets to the facility, it will be moldy, it will be sticky. There is no good quality in that paper, and it sometimes leaks into other things, which can ruin the whole batch. So try not to have food or liquids, put that into the compost when you can. Oh, look at that, I already kind of talked about contamination. I also get this questions like, well, what do I do with paper towels and things that have paper in its name? So the simplest thing is if it's meant to touch food or liquids, please compost it. Again, going back to the Fanta example, the paper gets moldy, it gets kind of nasty, and there's no quality to it. Also, if you want to be more technical, things that are meant to touch food or liquids that are paper-based, they're already kind of at the end of their lifespan. So you wouldn't try to recycle toilet paper because it's so flimsy. It will just shred apart, and you can't put it back together into paper that you could write on. You can't go up in quality, you can only go down. So recycle good things like your cardboard, your newspapers, and printer paper. Great visualization of recycling do's and don'ts. You don't have to rinse it out like you put in a dishwasher and have it sparkling clean. So long as most of the residue is gone, you can recycle it. So if you can, rinsing it, perfectly fine. You don't have to, use soap and everything. So as long as most of the stuff's out, you're good. Lastly, we're at landfill, associated with a tan beige color. It's kind of like the catch-all category left over. Sorry for the font. That used to be more of a dark brown, but that just says landfill over here. So plastic wrappers, your snack bags and packaging, anything that's a mixed material, meaning made out of more than one thing. So for example, this little envelope here, you have a plastic interior, a paper exterior, and then there's glue and all that. You can't really recycle that. They cannot take anything apart at the recycling facility. They only sort there. So you can't really recycle anything like a binder either, even though there's like, yeah, there's metal and then there's like cardboard in there. You can't, they won't take it apart, so it ends up in the landfill. Other things that you can't recycle, needs to go to the landfill is things like utensils, plastic utensils especially because it's an odd shape, low quality plastic. You can't turn that into anything new, and hence you cannot recycle that. Okay, more detail about mixed recyclable, now I'm just jumping over my words, sorry. More detail about mixed waste products. I'll let you all read it on your own time if you wish, since I covered it already. Plastic bags and plastic film. You can try to bundle them all together like a bag of bags for recycling. It's much more likely to get recycled versus a single bag. But the best thing you can do is say no to the bag, bring a reusable bag, and then if you have to recycle it, bring it back to a retail store like Target or a grocery store. Styrofoam, unfortunately, is never recyclable, despite what they may say. Nobody accepts it. It's very hard to recycle. And for your own information, it is a huge contributor to pollution and suspected to be carcinogen. The UC system has a plastic foam ban that took effect in 2020, but I can't stop individuals from bringing it to campus. And specialty handling. So again, referring to the Safe Center, if you have any sort of things that fall under universal waste or hazardous waste, please take it to the Safe Center for proper disposal. Not going to do the waste quiz. You can test yourselves on your own time, but here's a not to scale image of where waste goes. Starting from UCLA, our paper, glass, metal, and plastic recyclables go to the Sun Valley MRF. that's run by Athens. Our e-waste is taken by Human IT, where they can refurbish it, they can recycle it, turn into new materials, ends up in our stores, which we end up buying again. Circular, we like it. Alternatively, for compost, it goes to American Organic in Victorville. They turn it into compost, which is a soil amendment, and they distribute it to cities or farmers where they grow new produce, new materials, products, stores, UCLA, boom, circular. And then our waste to energy plant is closed. We do not incinerate anything to turn from waste to energy. The UC policy actually prohibits that beyond this year for all campuses because of the environmental and social implications of running a waste energy plant. So lastly, we will say that if you can't compost it, if you can't find a new home or donate it, and unfortunately goes to the landfill, where there is no going back to UCLA. Landfill is just a giant pit that you dig a hole and dump your trash in. Sometimes there are methods to collect the methane or compressed natural gas from decomposition to turn it into energy, but that's as good as it goes. It just sits there. It's a huge resource sink because that land cannot really be used again for a very long time. So there are videos available for you if you want to watch. A quick tour is linked here on YouTube. This is like about a 5-minute video just to see what the facility is like. Highly recommend if you can visit a MRF, a materials recovery facility, to please go. You can see the amount of volume that gets processed by any one facility. They service about a couple cities, a lot of businesses. It's just eye-opening to see where your waste goes beyond the trash can outside your home. We also did a fully annotated virtual tour with them as part of Sustainable last year. If you want to watch the operations manager do an interview with us and show us more detail than what's found on the YouTube, that's also available for your viewing. We're not going to watch it today. But here's the Sun Valley MRF, so 25 miles from UCLA. It's processed and then sent off to different manufacturers to turn to new materials. Industrial composting, this is a really good video to show you, just like through really cute graphics, how it works and why composting is different industrially versus at home. I will just say on this one though, we no longer take bioplastics or compostable plastics because it does not break down within the required time frame. So only 100% fiber-based products, as you would see in our single-use plastics policy. A lot of people ask me, like, why don't we compost on our campus? How come we can't process any closer? Here's the reason why. First, we generate a lot of compost, of food waste or green waste, you name it. If we were to compost it on our campus, we would overrun it, and we would have no room to just, go to school or go to work because there's so much food waste that gets generated on a given day. Secondly, it does take a lot of space depending on the type of facility for composting. So the facility that we use, it's called Windrose Composting. They require a lot of land so that the materials are broken down naturally at an accelerated pace. But again, it's rows and rows of this, and we do not have that space on our campus. And even if we did, we have some prestigious neighbors to the north, if you get what I'm saying. So there's a lot of permitting required to run one of these facilities, but we just don't have the capacity for it. We are trying to do some more smaller scale, I think biodigesters, but it does take a lot of work to set that up. So we're getting there, but not quite there yet. We sometimes get our compost back, but due to the distance, it's in limited batches. We are trying to add a compost that we have sent to Athens back to us for our lawn and landscape management, which is shown to improve the quality of our landscaping by quite a good amount. But again, it's not something we can do every day due to the volume that we generate and create and versus how much space we actually have on our campus. Lastly, if you're curious about how landfills operate and work, here's a link to the video. I found this to be the most accurate. I used to work for waste haulers before I came to UCLA, so I was able to verify that it's not just propaganda saying how great landfills are. I will say with a grain of salt towards the end, please keep in mind that you don't want to have too many ecosystems, either with animals, habitats, or human-wise, because landfills are still a bunch of trash. they do mention like, yeah, look, we created landfills, we patched it up and safer habitation again. So just that one grain of salt towards the end of the video. We send our waste to Castaic, the Chiquita Canyon landfill. It's about 639 acres. So I mentioned very early on in this presentation that UCLA is about 429. So think UCLA and a half, and that's how big this landfill is. We really want to emphasize the importance of minimizing our waste as we approach our zero waste goals, because once a landfill closes, they can choose to do a couple of things. They can choose to expand it, meaning they dig up another hole in the ground and allow the landfill to continue to operate as they fill up more things, or they close it. It goes through EPA monitoring for a given amount of time. And then we have to find a new landfill, which is more often further away in another community that we don't want to impact. And it costs more because of the time and resources to transport that waste. So first materials are sent to the MRF and then they're transferred to the landfill because it's a long trip from UCLA. We're going to end this on a good note. Actually, I'm not that close to ending, so I apologize. This used to be my last slide. There's about 10 slides left, so I'll try not to take too long. But individually, what can you do on a daily or weekly basis? Some ideas to start with. It is Plastic Free July. So think about some alternatives to your daily waste items, support sustainable products. Just reading about it and learning about it is a huge step. You don't have to be perfect. Do it at your own pace. Everyone's lived experience is a little bit different, and we acknowledge that accessibility to zero waste is different for everybody. So whether you prefer to use what you have at home with whatever creativity you have, that's perfectly fine, even if it's not Instagram aesthetics. Or if you are investing in something new, you want that aesthetic, that's also an option. But just think about, what you really need, what can you afford, what works for you, and everyone's journey is a little bit different. So there is no gatekeeping, there is no shaming. It's all about what works for you. Also want you to understand your local waste programs. We all live in different cities, different counties, different regions. What they have offering in your local homes may be different than what we are telling you at UCLA. So I gave you all information just about UCLA just now, but where you live could be a little bit different, especially look, the trash carts are different. If you live in Long Beach, your recycling cart is purple, and that's very uncommon. But for most cities, it's blue. They also have different programs, like if you have bulky items you want to remove. So highly recommend, if you need to utilize that where you live, look it up. You can always find their waste contract or look at their newsletters. So this is just a personal FYI for you and all your colleagues. That are also applicable if you live in an apartment here. They may have some different programs for you. Small steps lead to big changes. So again, it's not about doing everything at once because that is super overwhelming. Feel free to pick a branch from this chart and just take it one step at a time. People keep thinking that zero waste is about that mason jar, having all your trash in that one thing. It's really not, and that's really privileged and really difficult to attain. So that kind of leads us to a couple of myths I want to dispel as I wind this presentation down. Yes, zero waste is internationally defined as 90% diversion, but we are also trying to focus on reduction and reuse. It's a journey. Do not sprint. It's going to be a long marathon. So everyone's experience is a little bit different. Recycling doesn't matter. That's also a myth. So yes, I mentioned that 10% nationally it's being recycled, but we actually have a very high recovery rate from our facility. It's actually 83%. So it's really important to continue to put what's recyclable into the recyclables because recycling does create more jobs in landfills and incinerators. And when we go one step higher, reduction and reuse actually creates 200 more times as you're repairing and you're working with the community. So yes, recycling still matters, even though it doesn't look great. But I do want to emphasize that it's not your only solution. It's not the solution. I also get this question, like, everything's recycled. No, we kind of went over that when we said 9% recycled. There's a lot of rules, quote unquote, people get really turned off by or kind of get intimidated by. Again, if you stick to those categories that I showed you earlier in the presentation, you'll be good. Just if you want to be more technical, the type of plastics that's most likely recycled is number 1, 2s, and 5s. Nothing smaller than 2 inches. So unfortunately, those tiny salsa cups or condiment cups, they will get lost in the process and will not get recycled. And then I did talk about rinsing earlier. So it's not really necessary, but prefer just so that there's no gunk left over in the next stage. I also get this question, is biodegradable mean compostable? Not really. Biodegradable is kind of a greenwash at this point, unfortunately, because there's no time requirement, there's no conditions, and it breaks down into what it's made out of, which could mean it's plastic. So they say like, yeah, styrofoam degrades over time. Yeah, it's like 500 years and it turns back into plastic that's harmful. So saying that is very greenwashing. So same thing could be said for balloons. Like, yeah, balloons are biodegradable. They're just latex. It's like it takes hundreds and hundreds of years and it does not break down to anything that's useful or productive for the people or the environment. So compostable is what you want to look for. There's a certain time limit. It breaks down to natural or materials, and it's actually certified. So you have to be very carefully monitoring this process. So good thing is that we will not be offering bioplastics anymore moving forward unless there's no available alternative. Okay, whew. Now we're really towards the end, getting involved. So I do hire interns, ambassadors in the fall. I don't have too many positions available, but it's one way you can get involved. Another way is volunteering or being involved in a student organization. They have these three, so E3, Clean Consulting, REA, will have a lot of zero waste campaigns and focused projects, but they also have a lot of different other projects in sustainability. There's academic research through LA Grand Challenges or student action, sustainability action research. It's not student action research, it's sustainability action research. Or you can come up with your own projects. TJF, thank you, Jane. You know, they support a slew of different environmental and sustainable projects and events and all these great things. And we're also open to hearing what you have, you know, feedback-wise, what you're feeling in terms of perspectives. I work with my students to have these one-on-ones called community conversations. All you have to do is email me, reach out to me, DM us on Instagram. There's so many different ways to get your voice heard because we want to hear from you. We also have an EDI feedback form that's for all of sustainability. It's a very short form, and you can, if you'd like to be anonymous, you certainly can be, and you can put in as much info or not as you like. But again, it's just trying to get your voice heard because we know it's important and we want to hear it. Ooh, okay, resources, I'll link to a billion different things, but if you just want to refer to this slide, it's all hyperlinked. Please follow us on Instagram. We continuously put out a lot of information about UCLA focused sustainability versus just general sustainability education. Woohoo, they're great things. We put a lot of work and effort into it, so please share it with your friends. And that's it. Thank you for listening to me ramble for so long. If you ever want to contact me, my virtual door is always open. My calendar may not be, but I'm always here to respond to emails, to talk to you, to listen to y'all, and to work with y'all. I really love working with the students because you all have so many wonderful ideas and you have wonderful advocacy work, and sometimes it goes further than what a staff person can do. So I'm going to stop screen share for now. But just want to thank you all for your time again, and I'll just kind of hang out. If you have any questions, I can answer at this time.
Thank you so much. I personally learned a lot from the presentation, and I really appreciate you powering through all of that. We really appreciate you taking the time to really inform us. You're amazing. Does any council member have any questions, comments? Miss Haley?
Yes, quick question. By chance, do you have like a presentation that we can potentially like relate to our own offices regarding sustainability that's maybe like condensed or maybe like notes? Sorry, something I can relate to my office pretty much because that was really informative. I think that more people should be aware.
Yeah, definitely. I'll send it out to Jane, and then she can forward it to the rest of y'all. But I do have, this one was like the full version. So there's like anything you may ever need to know, but I do also have condensed versions that are meant to be like 20 minutes long versus what I just did. But yes, I will share that with everybody. And our resources on our website is also a wonderful place to start as well. So
thank you so
definitely
much.
will point you that way. Thank you.
Awesome. Does any other council member have any questions? Going once, going twice. If not, thank you so much. We really appreciate you coming through tonight. Yeah, and if you can share this presentation with us, just in case anyone wants to relay it to their office, that would be very helpful.
Definitely. Thank you again
Great.
for your time and have a good night.
Thank you. You can stick around or you can leave. I personally think that if you want to leave, you are more than welcome to leave. Thank you. Great. Moving straight into appointments. Fun. Okay, so for appointments, just a reminder, it is a 1-minute intro, 15-minute question and answer period, 1-minute closing, and then ARC recommendations and deliberations. Want to remind council members, if you can, please keep your cameras on. Y'all have probably been in interviews and it's always better to see faces rather than to see screens. Great. Okay, awesome. Thank you to council members that are turning them on. We're moving straight into Luis Garcia Chavez, who I know we had last week, but I know that we wanted to have a further discussion. So we'll start off with Luis. And Luis, you have the floor to give your 1-minute intro.
I think we need to promote Luis.
Okay, awesome.
I'm going to promote him.
Can all appointments that are being made tonight, please raise your hands and we can promote you at this time.
I'm going to promote someone who isn't raising their hand, but they're on the agenda. Okay, Breeze, I think that's everyone.
Awesome. Thank you, Cass. Great. We can go ahead and start with Luis whenever you are ready.
Sorry, my video isn't that great. Yeah, it's
no
a little.
worries at all.
Yeah, I have technological difficulties.
Yeah, you
All
can
right, well,
keep your cameras
anyways.
off.
Yeah. Well, anyways, hello, my name is Luis Garcia. I was here on the last meeting, and thank you for the opportunity to allow me to have like a second interview as a follow-up after the many issues you guys had me prior. I've done extensive research over like the committee and what we can do. I even talked to one of a previous committee member and talked about what I can do and my goals, because I really want to focus on transfer students and first generation students and non-traditional students and their aid. And he told me a lot that I can do to benefit these groups. Like, for example, I want to expand more funding for the transfer student center, since they rely so much on like the fee funding come their organization and their centers, and they've struggled with like paying their bills and whatnot, like rent, and that's why they made the agreement. I don't just want to fund them, also want to fund other organizations that are also struggling with money and are very reliant on the fee committee, such as the Veterans Affair. And I think we should prioritize these groups, first generation students, transfer students, and organizations that rely on fee committees, as they will be like suffering because of COVID. They're gonna need more aid, since a lot of more students going to be like need help in like processing back to in-person education. And since the budget of the community has been shrunk because of COVID-19, prior it used to be like around 6 million, 5 million, but now it's dropped down to like 2 million. That was the projected. I think those groups should be prioritized, but other groups that are not so reliant on fees, funding, should be either have their budgets reduced or kept the same as much as we can.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Luis. So now we will go straight into the 15-minute question and answer period. Council members, please raise your hands and I will call on you. Any questions? Come on, let's get at least one hand up, please. Awesome. Angie?
Hi, Louise. Thank you for coming back. My question is, how do you plan to communicate with the student body regarding the decision-making process when it comes to SBAC allocations?
Well, we have to talk to them. We have to discuss the fact that we need to prioritize a lot of like centers and organizations that need funding, and we need to be honest with them. Like the budgeting that the fee committee has been cut. Like, so we have to explain to them seriously and thoroughly, like, hey, we need to prioritize on organizations that are very reliant on fees, and we can't fund like every organization that requests funding. We need to prioritize, and so do they. And so if they don't, then it could cause so much dissatisfaction with all centers and all student organizations.
Thank you so much, Lise. Tay, then Jane.
Yeah, so hi, nice to see you again. So this question is kind of similar to the question that you answered in your intro, but what makes you an ideal candidate to serve on SBAC?
Well, I was part of student government back then in Fullerton College. I was actually part of the finance committee over there at Fullerton College for associated students. So I dealt a lot with like allocating funding and budgeting and having discussions about what should be prioritized or not. Like I remember prior in my time in Fullerton College, we were discussing whenever to fund textbook loans or syringes for people who have diabetes and whatnot. And while I was debating like, okay, we can't do the textbook loans this semester because we don't have enough funding, we don't have enough time. And we decided to focus most on the syringe implementation in the bathrooms and whatnot for people who are diabetic. So because it could be like more, it could be implemented right away. Well, like the textbook loan program, we like shifted away to like the next semester. Like we were trying to plan it out. So I have experience like debating, discussing things, and like trying to like plan out like different policies and which one should be prioritized and which should be implemented first or later.
Awesome. Jane, then Emily.
Hi. Yeah, this is kind of similar to Angie's question, but I know you mentioned wanting to outreach to non-traditional students. So just like, what are some ideas you have to make sure that all students are aware of yourself and your position, and how do you plan on connecting with them?
Well, I think there should be more extensive outreach of the community onto like social media, like Instagram. I think they should be posting a lot more of the budgeting, the different proposals we would want to recommend. We should like establish like polls for a lot of these students so they could choose which policy they think best. We could get an idea what like students would want. I was also like to like announce like allow for like the committee to like maybe even pass out flyers or even inform other students of the different things we'll be doing in the committee so students can be more involved in it.
Awesome. Emily?
Hi. Oh, sorry. Hi. I think you may have probably addressed this already in like your previous answer, but I was wondering like if how you have like plans to channel student input into your decisions, such as with things that maybe you hadn't already thought of yourself.
I'm sorry, can you repeat the last part? You cut off a little.
Oh, sorry. Just wondering like if you have any ideas for how to channel student input into your decisions, such as for ideas that maybe you haven't thought of yourself to like, be able to inform yourself of like other student community needs throughout UCLA.
Oh yeah, like I explained prior, like I would like to do like polls on like Instagram, social media, so we could get like a little bit more feedback on like the decisions I will personally make. And I will also like to talk to like individuals and students like in my own classroom, and even when I'm walking around to UCLA to get their input as well, because I feel like we both need like a formal connection with the student body, but like also an informal method. Because I know a lot of people won't understand the general bolts and terminology of the committee. And I think having like the informal connection, informal conversations will allow them to like actually understand what they want and like give good recommendations.
Awesome. Any other questions? Going once, going twice. Awesome. I don't believe ARC you guys interviewed, right? Since then?
No, we just did that one interview.
Awesome.
Before.
Okay. So maybe, yeah, Council members, deliberations, thoughts? Anyone? And who wants to start us off?
I can start us off. I really appreciate that he reached out to a previous SFAC member, I believe, and got more information, kind of realigned what he wants to do, or not realigned, but, give concrete, actionable plans on how he wants to execute his vision and his goals. Also, I just like I said last or 2 weeks ago, like I can feel his passion. I know that he's going to do a great job. So I feel more comfortable in this appointment than I did 2 weeks ago. Yes.
Yeah, I know I'm not a voting member, but I definitely could tell that he put in the work to like understand more, and it means a lot that he made that extra effort, which was kind of what we wanted to see. So yeah, great. I think council members are all agreeing. Can I get a motion?
I move to appoint Luis Chavez to SFAC.
A second?
I second.
A second.
Angie motions, Tay seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands. Awesome. And by a vote of 14 to 0 to 0, 14 to 0 to 0, sorry, 14 to 0 to 0, the motion passes and Luis Garcia Chavez is appointed to SFAC. Congratulations, Luis. Thank you so much for coming out again tonight.
Yeah, thank you. And I also wanted to give thanks to Hernan Luis Chavez. Like, thank you for your help. You helped me quite a lot, and you connected me with the prior fee member, part of the one that was part of the committee. So thank you for all your help.
Oh, love that. Great. Thank you so much, Armand. Thank you so much, Luis. Awesome. Moving straight into SIOC, Miss Danica's in the house.
Hi, everybody. Do I just go ahead with my intro?
Yeah, just go ahead and give your 1-minute intro and then we can go straight into Q&A.
Okay. So hi, everybody. My name is Danica Ferranda. I'm a rising third year traditional student majoring in sociology and psychology and minoring in education. So some experience I have is that I was a space staff member, which is the Samang Filipino Advancing Community Empowerment project under Samang Filipino, which is all under the outreach and access part of the CPO project. So I was a staff member going into winter quarter my first year, where I got firsthand experience on how these student leaders really tend to their communities and give the marginalized communities that they serve the resources they need from students who came from backgrounds like them. So that is where I saw the importance of outreach committee and outreach projects that serve these students who are first generation, low income, looking to transfer into higher education institutions, and just students of color in general. They're the ones that need these services the most. And I believe that someone who sits on the SIOC needs somebody who centers the students from these communities and going through the process of the inequities that the education system gives. So I believe that my experience through space really adds to why I should be appointed to SAOC.
Amazing. Thank you, Danica. Council members, any questions? Maya and Natalia, I'm not sure if those are old hands or new hands. Just wanted to let you both know. Haley?
Yeah. Hi, Danica. Nice to see you again. So my question for you is, how do you plan to go about outreaching to regions that have historically like low numbers of applicants due to a lack of access to resources and knowledge regarding applying to the UCs?
So with that, I can use my experience as the the previous term Academic Affairs Commission Equity and Accessibility Director, because during that term I hosted quarterly workshops to students of color, community college students and high school students who were looking to pursue higher education and just didn't know how to start, because I definitely was in that position. So with my position as an SIOC appointment, I hope to go to the access codes for each of the outreach projects and kind of gather their data from the previous year, even though it was online. And I know they might not have had like a lot of students looking for their services. I want to assist them in really outreaching to each of their sites, looking on efficient ways to gather data from the schools that they serve to really gauge information on how they can best bring these students into these services. Because like me, I was just looking for student leaders and people I can look up to who were first generation and students of color looking to go into the higher education system. So I think doing the work first, since the transition into in-person services might be a little difficult this year, I think going into the stakeholders that each of the MOs and the MO projects have would really help assist in outreaching to these communities and getting students within their sites to go through these services and projects.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Danica. I know I do have a question as well. I've kind of made it a big effort of mine, to be very active within the MOs these past couple weeks, or since I came into office for this position. And I really want to ensure that, I'm having meetings with not only my appointment to the SIOC, but all the other appointments. So I just kind of want to see how you would ensure transparency, right? To ensure that what you and I discuss in our meetings will be, relayed back to the MOs.
Yeah, so as an SIOC appointment, I hope to kind of host community town halls, maybe by twice a quarter, 3 times a quarter, as much as I feel like it's needed, just because I know there needs to be transparency within the behind the scenes work with the student leaders providing their services to these students. So host town halls to the general public, because I know a lot of these students, like both for the outreach and retention committees, they're the ones that need the help the most and the ones that are benefiting from these. So I think that having their voices out there and their opinions being heard can definitely be a good way to relay back to us on the committee and also in OP, because I know I'm also my position OP, the Director of Student Initiated and Student Ran Projects. I know that's going to be a really big thing that Maxine, the previous Student Initiated Outreach Chair, that we're both doing in order to keep transparency and accountability to the administrators and the students themselves. So I think something I want to do to relay back information is also keep in contact with those sitting on the CRC, just so that we can all gain some type of, I guess, transparency and be on the same page in terms of what help our projects need and what help our students need. So whatever we talk about in reason in our meetings, I hope to relay it back to the CRC appointments and the the retention cords, and also the SIOC appointments and the access cords, so that full transparency can be heard between our meetings and the student leaders serving their projects.
Awesome. Any other questions from council members? I see Armand's hand is up.
Thanks, Breeze. Hi, Danica. It's good to see you again. I was wondering if you can talk a little bit about how you perceive transfer outreach and retention to be have a relationship with the SIOC and with like the mother orgs, student of color retention that those projects address.
Yeah, definitely. We actually had a transfer, someone from the transfer representative come in last year for our AAC office, and that's why I learned a lot about transfer students of color coming into UCLA, not having a lot of resources. So something I want to implement and just discuss with the access courts from each of the MOs is how to engage transfer representation, because from my experience on space, Samang Filipinos outreach, there weren't a lot of transfer students serving the transfer community, if that makes sense. So there weren't a lot of transfer staff. So I want to hopefully discuss with the student leaders from the MOs and the assistant project coordinators, and especially the access coords, on how we can increase transfer engagement, like especially incoming first year transfers, since I know their involvements might be cut pretty short because they're coming in and they're only spending like 2 to 3 years at UCLA. I want to see how we can involve them, even though like application seasons may have passed to apply to staff and stuff. I want to see how we can involve transfers to serve these transfer sites, because I feel like they're the ones who can tell the narratives of transfer students the best. So hopefully having a conversation with the access courts from each of the MOs on how we can maybe appoint certain transfer like peer tutors or peer advisors to their staff in order to really give the community college students the assistance and the resources they need from people who have gone through that themselves.
Awesome. Carl and Cass?
I think Cass had her hand up first. You can go first, Cass.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Hi, Danica. So ARC wanted to ask this question. So during the ARC interview, you expressed that you are a director for an OP committee or Office of the President committee that specifically identifies the situation with CPO and the MOs. So our question is, how will you make your work as SIOC slightly different than being OP director for that committee?
I think because a lot of my passions rely on outreach, and that's kind of where I rooted in my undergraduate journey at UCLA. I think, I think just even though my work in OP is definitely being an advocate and making these situations heard and these narratives from alumni and current and past students heard through like research and creating a research project, I think my work as an SIOC appointment will really dive down into what these communities need, because like I said before, the CPO doesn't really support these students. They're not giving them the resources they need to fully set out the work and execute the work that they need to. So I think just me being the advocate, sitting on the committee for them, trying to gauge all of the access coordinators and the MOs, all of their involvement with what's going on with CPO, because like the future of these students, future generations of marginalized students coming into higher education, that really lies in the hands of the current leaders. So I think my position as an SAOC appointment will really dive down into what can I do to best support the student leaders, and how can I really engage them with what's going on with CPO in order for them to put out work within their own staff, within their own mother org, to really understand what's going on with CPO, and how can they gain like, how can they mobilize past what's going on with CPO? Yeah, so how can they mobilize past what's going on with CPO? Because I know my work within OP, that's going to be like kind of just researching alumni narratives, current student narratives, but here I'll be working hands-on with the students themselves on how I can best support their communities.
Awesome. Thank you, Carl.
Thank you. Thank you. I just wanted to ask, well, first off, thank you for being here. You've been doing a great job. I wanted to ask, what are some of the biggest issues you foresee yourself taking on as you prepare to take this office, and how do you plan to deal with them?
So I think the biggest issue I see is just how am I going to tackle the administrators who don't really agree with my type of advocacy, because I feel like in these kind of situations, I'm very vocal. And I've actually had a conversation with Maxine, who I said before was the past SIOC chair. She definitely mentioned how traumatizing and how just how difficult being in this position was. So I think that's like the biggest challenge I see, is just how to try to get these administrators to listen to us, to be on the same page as us, because like I've said before, they're not putting these students first. They're not seeing like how they can best serve them. They're only looking out for themselves really on how they can benefit from the services that we're giving and the services that we provide to these students, and like the success stories that the student leaders get as peer tutors or peer advisors or just like staff members within their project. So I think how I can tackle that is definitely ask for help. That's something I've learned throughout my college experience, is never trying to apologize to anyone to ask for help, because they're there for a reason, they're resources for a reason, and they've been in your position trying to continue that work that they try to do and that they've taken out. So I think being a co with Maxine will definitely be helpful for me in terms of like understanding my position better, in terms of understanding like how the meetings work and how to approach certain administrators who may not agree with me, or other student leaders on the SAOC. So definitely asking for help, giving myself some time to process things and take mental breaks for myself, because like I've said, I know this is a pretty big commitment to have. So just taking time for myself to understand and putting my community first is something that I will do in this position.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Danica. Do any other council members have questions? If not, we can go straight into your closing statement, Danica.
Okay, so something I didn't mention in any of the questions was hopefully bringing transparency back to UCLA students from CPO admin and UCLA admin, because I know that's something that's been something difficult. So hopefully I want to implement a SAOC and CRC Instagram and social media, just to highlight the narratives of the students within their projects and just provide them with more transparency on meeting notes, providing them with meeting notes, making it more accessible to students to see how these meetings run and what administrators mentioned during these meetings, because I know that's going to be a big thing to look out for in this upcoming year, where these projects are transitioning into online, and there's just this ongoing fight for student power to be given back. So hopefully just creating relationships and rapport with the fellow student orgs is something I want to do, and make sure that all the student leaders on SIOC and just in their projects in general are centering their students and their communities doing the work that they're doing. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Danica. Straight into council deliberations, or no, ARC, sorry.
Okay, ARC 3-0 positive recommendation for Danica as SIOC. Personally, I did vote positive because I definitely has seen Danica's like experience in like SP and all the work that she has done in the community. And it's not just like experience, she also has like so much passion for this work. So I highly like believe in her, and she'll do an amazing job. So that's kind of why I voted positively.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, I know that myself, Danica, you were in my office last year and my office again this year. I know you do great work and you care very deeply about issues of academic equity. And I know that you're going to do, hopefully, you know, if you're appointed, you're going to do really well in both AAC and my office again. Does anyone else have anything else to say? Any questions, comments, concerns? Going once, going twice. Erman?
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what y'all have said. I think in both the ARC interview and today, Danica demonstrated a really strong, not just, passion and commitment and background, but also a really strong idea of where to take SIOC and what to do with the committee this year. And I think that that's super, super important and commendable, and something that I'm really excited to see in this year. And also that I really appreciated the awareness of the transfer community that you articulated, and that my office is always here to support SIOC and to support the education efforts around transfer awareness to the communities that are affected by SIOC, and that I look forward to working with you on that this year.
Awesome. Thank you, Arman. Okay. Anything else? Council members, once, twice? Great. Can I get a motion, please?
I move to appoint Danica to the SIOC.
Can I get a second?
I second.
Jane motions, Cass seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands. Great. By a vote of 14-0, the motion passes and Danica is appointed to the SIOC committee. Congratulations, Danica. We look forward to working with you this year.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
And you can feel free to stay or leave, up to you. Thank you so much, Danica. Great. Moving straight into SHAC. And for that, I believe Jeremy's in the room. Can you promote him, please, Cass?
Okay, I just promoted.
Thank you. And Jeremy will give the intro for both the SHAC appointment and the CPC.
Cool. Hi, everyone. It's good to be here. My name is Jeremy real quick. I use he, him pronouns. I'm one of the appointments directors this year. I am excited to introduce Sumaya as a possible appointee to the Student Health Advisory Committee, or SHAC. So during our interview, Sumaya's passion and commitment to advocacy made her a really strong candidate, and in particular, her passion for mental health awareness that was informed by her own background. During her interview, we also saw that she understands the importance of advocating for the health needs of our minority communities, while also knowing that as a representative, she also represents the interests of the whole undergraduate population. And even though she will be new to campus as a first-year transfer, Sumaya's drive speaks for itself, and we wholeheartedly recommend her for the Student Health Advisory Committee. And we'll now let her introduce herself further.
Awesome. Can I get an intro? Sorry, Sumaya here. Sumaya? I'm not sure, maybe internet. Sumaya, can you hear us? If not, Josh, we can do Elizabeth, right? And then come back to Sumaya if anything.
Yeah, if we have technical issues, Jeremy, do you have Samaya's telephone number? We're going to skip over her. If we could potentially reach out to her to see if it's internet issues or if she stepped away from the computer. But while we figure that out, let's move forward to Elizabeth and we could jump back. Yes.
Okay, cool. I'll introduce Elizabeth and then I'll shoot her a text.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Okay, perfect. So for Elizabeth, it is my pleasure to introduce her as a possible appointee to the Campus Program Committee, also known as CPC. During our interview, we noted her involvement as the African Student Union, or ASU's financial coordinator this past year, as well as next year. And she was also part of CPC this past year, so she understands what it's like to both apply for and distribute funding. And we really valued that her vision included balancing the need to support student organizations with ensuring that the committee is financially responsible as more student orgs try to acquire funding for these events. And her interview really helped us to see her as a great fit for this position, and we'll now let her introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Tell me if my Wi-Fi does the thing that Wi-Fi's do so I can connect to my hotspot. But hi, everyone. My name is Elizabeth. I'm a rising third-year psychobiology major, and I applied to the appointment of CPC. I applied to CPC because I'm really passionate about the type of events that CPC focuses on: student-run, student initiative, educational and cultural events that support both our on-campus and off-campus community. I've been like an attendee to these events, so I've witnessed the impact that it's had on me personally. Like Jeremy said, I'm the financial coordinator for the African Student Union. So my involvement there, I've helped put on programs that are culturally relevant and or educationally relevant to on-campus or off-campus community. And I was able to serve on the CPC committee last year. So I was kind of involved in all 3 tiers. So with that knowledge, I think I can continue to support this committee if I am appointed into next year, and making sure that students know that this is a resource for them to apply to, and that they have access to these funds, and to encourage students to continue to utilize, and knowing that they have the support of the university, as these are student-run, student initiative events. So sometimes having that support does go a long way to continue putting on these programs for on campus and off campus.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that intro, Elizabeth. Great. We're moving into council Q&A. Council members, if you have any questions, please raise your hands and I will go ahead and call on you. Okay, so my computer did a thing. I don't know who had their hand raised first. I mean, we can go ahead and start off with Cass and Tay. I'll just go based off who I see on the screen.
Okay, my question is, what is one goal you are looking forward to in CPC for the upcoming school year?
One goal, I think, is to, if y'all can hear the fireworks, please excuse that. One goal, I guess, for me personally for CPC next year is to kind of have the events that couldn't apply for funding this past year due to the pandemic come back, and see those events come back to in-person or hybrid, however that may look like. I know we didn't get as many applicants this year, so we were able to be a lot more generous, but I'm hoping those events are kind of able to come back because they're really important. And the students that they were serving through those events, I know would really appreciate those events coming back.
Awesome, Tay.
Awesome. Hi again, Elizabeth. So my question is, like, what ideas do you have to promote to student orgs that may have not heard of CPC before or may have not applied to the fund in the past? How do you plan on advertising the fund to these orgs specifically?
I think just because of my position being in the African Student Union, I do have access to the, if I'm not mistaken, it's like 25, 27 different Harambe orgs just under ASU. So I guess with them specifically, I can also support because I'm a part of those group chats, but through those networks that I have through ASU, I used to work at CPO. So like people who may be in that space too, kind of advertising through those networks that I directly have access to let them know that this is an option for them. This summer, I'm also a peer counselor for FTSP. So also using the other counselors as like a pool to get it farther than I can. So like, oh, well, if you have people that you know, through being their peer counselor, like you can always recommend them to this fund, and using those group chats that I have access to so that those students are able to find out about the fund and the mini fund and know that they can continue to put on programming that supports their communities.
Awesome. Jane, then Sarah.
Hi, Elizabeth. Thank you so much for being here today. I just wanted to ask you about what's like one thing you are excited for this year if you were to be appointed to this position. And yeah.
One thing I'm excited for, I guess, would kind of be those events coming back, but something like outside of that, I think I'm just excited for like how creative students are going to be when we come back. During the pandemic, I was able to witness some of that creativity. Like a lot of people are kind of coming up with events I would have never once thought of, never once considered. So kind of seeing that come back, because a lot of students are like, I know for me, I'm a rising third year. My first year was cut short. Second year, not all of the events were present. So now my third year, there's a lot of things I haven't seen yet on USAC campus that might have been a tradition before, or like, students who are in my position and like, hey, has anyone ever done this? Can we do something like that? So kind of seeing how creative students are when it comes to programming, that's something that's really exciting for next year, especially because it'll be like hybrid in person.
Awesome. Sarah, then Angie.
Hey, Elizabeth, great to meet you. In your intro, you mentioned that going to these events and programs are a really integral part of your freshman year, even though it was cut short. So I'd love to just hear about one of them that was particularly impactful for you and why.
I would say the higher education conference. So that's like a February type of event, but it's specifically targeting middle school and high school students to come to campus and they kind of get like almost a day in the life, as well as like workshops about like college and higher education. Yes, like higher education conference was just amazing because it's so easy to kind of be like, I made it to college and that's great. But then also kind of like looking back on like, wow, I was really in high school and I had no clue about what I was going to do when it came to college. Like I only found out about like where I had to apply in like 11th grade. So kind of being able to give those students that support early on so they won't be in that position and letting them see people like them in college. Like, oh, like if I could be here, you could be here. Like, don't think of college as something like unattainable to you. Like very much you could be here, you could thrive. So I think that's why I liked higher education conference the most out of all the events I had in person, just because like it kind of helps students on so many different levels. Because I know if I would have had that support, like someone entering UCLA, I definitely would have felt a lot more confident in myself when it came to like the application process and being on campus, because that imposter syndrome really hits quick when you get here. So definitely I think that one was like the biggest, the best.
Thank you for sharing.
Angie?
Hi, Liz. It's so nice to see you again. And thank you for sharing. My question is, how will you go about getting student input for different programming and funding?
Because I'm the financial coordinator for ASU, I feel like the Harambe Council orgs that like fall under ASU as a mother organization, sometimes they look to like my position in terms of like, where can we apply for funding? What does funding look like? What are they looking for in applications when you apply for funding? Like how to cover your bases so you have the best possible application, and like hearing. So supporting students that way. Oh, I think I already forgot your question. Can you ask it again?
Yeah, so how will you go about getting student input for programming and funding?
Oh, okay, that's where my brain was going. So I guess like through the Harambe Council, like having all of those different orgs that kind of serve different purposes, like and their ideas of, in terms of like what do programs look like or what type of programs are they kind of able to put on. I know like COVID guidelines and everything's kind of like constantly updating and how those kind of change because graduation went from being virtual to in person in like 3 days, and kind of seeing how that's looking for those spaces. I think taking input from there and kind of like relaying that to my committee as well, like, oh well, a lot of groups seem to be like kind of still stuck on Zoom, or they're not really sure how to hold a hybrid event and like what access they have in terms of like, can they have like a hybrid Zoom in person, like how would that look like, and things of that nature. So I think using that network and telling that to my committee, I think can kind of help us when we're looking at programming and what our application questions look like.
Awesome. Any other questions from council members? Okay, Elizabeth, you can move straight into your closing.
Thank you all for seeing me tonight. It's been great. Again, like I'm really passionate about like culturally and educationally relevant student programming because I know how impactful they can be for the on-campus community, and being the fact that I've been involved in like all 3 layers at some point in my USAC journey, I feel like I could bring that experience moving into next year in terms of like deliberations and conversations and even the questions we ask to the students who come during the hearings to make sure that their events are as great as they could possibly be, and that we're funding events that are definitely gonna have an impact on both on-campus and off-campus campus communities moving forward. So thank you all for this opportunity to share, and yeah.
Awesome, thank you so much. ARC?
ARC, to 3-0. ARC gives a positive recommendation for Elizabeth as CPC committee. I do want to mention that Elizabeth expressed so much like specific plans that I personally really liked, and they do seem attainable in the upcoming year. She also had so much like passion and knowledge about the position, so I definitely think that she has the abilities to do an amazing job next school year.
Awesome. Yeah, I don't know if does any other council member have any thoughts, comments? I'll just say, Elizabeth, from what I heard, it sounds like you do have really great plans, and I'm really excited to see what you accomplish this year. Yeah, it's really exciting. Great. If there's no other comments, concerns, can I get a motion, please?
I motion to approve Elizabeth to the Campus Programs Committee.
Can I get a second?
A second.
Andy motions, Sarah seconds. All in favor, please raise your hand. Awesome. By a vote of 14-0, the motion passes and Elizabeth is appointed to the CPC committee. Congratulations, Elizabeth. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you all so much.
Awesome. Thank you. And I believe the next person, we're going to go back to Sumia. Jeremy, were you able to get a hold of her?
Yes, she should be here. I think she's here.
Hi
but-
guys, sorry for that.
Okay, I will introduce you again real quick. So I am super excited to introduce Sumaya here as a possible appointee to the Student Health Advisory Committee, or SHAC. Her passion and commitment to advocacy made her a really strong candidate. In particular, her passion for mental health awareness that was informed by her personal background. Through her interview, we saw that she understands the importance of advocating for the health needs of our minority communities, while also knowing that as a representative, she is advocating for all of the undergraduate population. And even though she will be new to campus as a first-year transfer, we saw that her drive really speaks for itself, and we wholeheartedly recommend her for the committee. And we'll now let her introduce herself further.
Well, thank you for that introduction. Hi guys, my name is Sumaya. I will be an incoming transfer student entering my junior year as a psychology major. And as previously mentioned, I have been doing a lot of advocacy for mental health in the low-income communities. And I'm just really passionate about providing people with those resources. And yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Sumaya. Council members will now be entering the Q&A period. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, I saw Tay, then Arman, and then all the hands went up at the same time. So we'll go from there. Tay?
Hi, nice to see you again. Okay, so I actually have 3 questions. And I know for the sake of time, I'll just ask one, and then at the end, if I feel like I need to ask the other 2, I'll just do that. So the first question I have is, were there any health and wellness resources that promoted health equity at your community college? If so, what type of resources did you witness, and what type of resources do you think can be brought to UCLA and executed through your SHAC appointment? I'll also drop this question in the chat too.
Thank you for that. I'd like to also start off with saying my pronouns are she, her. I don't know if I said that earlier, and it's not in my name. But resource that I was available at my community college that I greatly appreciated was we had something similar to group therapy where we just called it like Wednesday check-ins. And I think it helped have accountability for like a small intimate group of people, because every Wednesday you would like see these people over and over again, and you were able to talk about your week, and you were able to talk about your classes, and it was like this accountability and the most social type of aspect in this remote learning. And while I know there's group therapy with CAPS program, or excuse me, with CAPS, I think like reinstating the whole like checking in with at least a few people every week would be really crucial and really beneficial. So yeah.
Awesome. Tay, did you want to ask another question?
Yes, but I'm gonna just wait until everyone asks their questions just in case.
Yeah. Erman?
Thanks, Breeze. Hi, Samaya. It's good to see you again. I was wondering, especially noting, and this is something that, we've been thinking a lot about, is returning back to campus with COVID-19, especially facing a hybrid model. And so I was wondering if you can talk about, with this situation, how you plan on advocating for holistic student health and wellness in the face of this transition.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it's going to be really difficult for everyone to adjust to going back on campus, whether it's the new from virtual to in-person learning. And I think just having or reinstating, excuse me, the resources being provided, and to state that yes, it's okay to struggle, and yes, it's okay to talk about the struggles, and to just try to fight the stigma that is towards mental illness in general. Because a lot of people will have social anxiety because they haven't talked to people on a grand scale in several months, or up to a year, excuse me, or maybe they'll just struggle academically. But I think just fighting the stigma of asking for help would really be beneficial in the long run.
Awesome, thank you. Angie, then Haley?
Hi, my question is, what are your plans for advocating for the health and well-being of immunocompromised students and students with disabilities amid the return to campus?
That's a great question. I know there's specific plans for them in regards to housing, especially or excuse me, sorry, I messed up. Um, sorry. I know for immune compromised people, they are a part of this really small group, and they are really afraid to go back on campus, and the same with the disabled. So I think being a able-bodied person, and me myself having no immune compromisations, I think it's just important for me to empathize with them and to honestly listen to their feedback and listen to what they need, because a lot of the time they have a voice that isn't being heard or acknowledged, and acknowledging it is the first step. So yeah.
Haley, then Cass?
Hi, Samaya. I'll drop this question in the chat as well, but how will you hold the university accountable to providing care that acknowledges and appropriately caters to the diversity of students coming into the Wellness Center? And sorry for the noise in the back.
I think an important aspect of acknowledging someone is by confronting them in a non-hostile and non-educational form, in the sense that I would bring up topics in a confrontational way. However, having the conversations and getting the conversation started is the first step. So I think just me being able to have that communication is really important. Yeah.
Awesome. Tay, then Cass? I mean, Cass, then Tay, sorry.
My question is, what are your specific plans to promote transparency and accountability in this position, specifically with the SWC office and other USAC offices?
I think there's an importance in reiterating the anonymity of going to drop-ins and just receiving these resources, because a lot of the time students, I know I'd feel inclined to think it'd be on my record or something. So I think just talking of the fact that it's anonymous, you'd get the help that you received, and without having the fear of it being reported, if that makes any sense. And well, yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Awesome, thank you, Tay, then Carl?
Awesome. Okay, so this is kind of a long-winded question, so I'll also drop this in the chat. But UCLA, like other universities across the nation, have a history of criminalizing mental health and overall student wellness. So given that SHAC, works alongside ASH, CAPS, and other administrative bodies, I kind of wanted to know what your stance was on police response to mental health crises. Doesn't have to be a well-polished answer either, but I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts.
Yeah, that's a great question, because I know that if you're called for an incident and regarding on the specificity of what you say, it could be either viewed as illegal drugs versus a mental health breakdown. And so I think that's like a great point that has been brought up, and I will know if I get the position. But my personal opinion is that if you are having a mental breakdown or just a mental episode, that you should be treated for that first and foremost, regardless of your circumstance or regardless of your situation. Because if we were able to just say like, oh, if you're doing drugs, then you're doing drugs, then it totally diminishes the whole seeking help. So I think an important aspect is just being like, hey, if you need help, get help, and then we'll figure it out from there. So just the initial making students want to receive help is an important part. So yeah.
Carl?
It's 9 o'clock.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. Mental health is very important, and just health in general of our UCLA students is important. I wanted to ask you, what are some of the biggest flaws you see currently with the health, like the health system at UCLA, and how do you think you could like make change in that, or kind of make it better?
Well, I'm only transferring to UCLA, so I haven't done that much since. I've done research on it, but I haven't figured it out. But in general, a lot of I think it's just misconception, whether it's from like your low income and seeing mental health as like you failing, if that makes any sense. So it's never acknowledged as you just seeking help. It's always you failing, or especially like I'm a religious person, and like a lot of people in very religious groups will just say like you're losing faith or whatever, which is such a misconception in itself. And I think it's just all these stigmas that come from lack of education or misrepresentation that make mental health so seem as though it's so hard to obtain when it's so simple and so easy. And yeah.
Awesome. Any other questions? Tay?
Yeah, sorry, y'all. I know it's 9 o'clock. This is my last question for the night, though. I kind of just wanted to ask you, are there any like health disparity or health issues that you're super passionate about that you would want to act upon in SHAC?
Well, I currently just volunteer in helping give resources to those who don't have resources for mental health. So I would like to say mental health in general. But I come from a really low income family, and we never really had access to health services in general. And so I think health services is like, for me, it was like the first time I'm getting health services. So it's probably someone else's first time getting health services. So I think it's just having this opportunity now when you're at a university to get any type of medical benefit that you, or not any type, but a majority of medical benefit that you would want. So yeah.
Okay, any other questions from council members? If not, you can give your closing statement.
Well, I'd like to reiterate my name. I'm Samaya Abdul Kareem, and I'd like to thank you guys for this opportunity. And I think an important part of me wanting this position is me just empathizing with others. While I am a part of many minority groups and disadvantaged people, I think it's important for me to acknowledge that I will try to understand everyone regardless of where they're from. And so yeah.
Awesome, thank you so much. Can I hear ARC, please?
For ARC, from 0 to 0 to 3, there is a negative recommendation. We do want to like share that we do acknowledge like her passion and her experiences in the past, but we did wanted to hear more specific plans about everything for the upcoming school year in regards to the SHAC position. And so that's where we're at. I don't know if like ARC wants to share a little bit more, or if like thoughts has changed.
Okay.
Yeah, I can share. I just wanted to say that I appreciate you being here, and I appreciated your ARC interview too. Just to give like a concrete example of like what I would look for. Like for example, I know you're really passionate about mental health, and I love that. I highly encourage you to join SWC Active Minds. But I think since, you know, SHAC is definitely like a policy hub and they do programming, I would have loved to hear something about working on different mental health policies or something of that nature to kind of make these plans seem more actionable. Because I love the passion, but I really wanted to see how we execute these passions in the SHAC appointment. So that was pretty much my stance on why I voted the way I did. I definitely would love to see you in the Student Wellness Commission though, and I will personally send you like the application link. But yeah, those are just my thoughts.
Yeah, I also want to point out the same way that we did give the other student that came, I believe it was Luis, like the opportunity, especially as a transfer, right, to learn a bit more. I think that's an opportunity that we can offer to Sumaya as well, because we want to make sure that we're fair to everyone. And I can definitely see the passion. So that's just something I want to bring up. Great. Erman?
Thanks, Breeze. Yeah, I want to say thank you so much again for your interviews, for coming here and for sharing your passions with us. I share very similar perspectives to both Cass and Tay, and the only thing that I wanted to add was also sort of looking for an emphasis on holistic student wealth on top of mental health, like definitely acknowledging that mental health is incredibly important for our student body and definitely something, as Tay mentioned, to focus on in terms of policy, but also emphasizing that SHAC does have power and responsibility when it comes to holistic student wealth in a variety of areas. And so I think that that's also something that I would have loved to hear more about, was sort of like expanding that positionality on SHAC to be able to support any sort of student wellness issues that exist on campus. But the other thing that I really do want to emphasize is, again, this experience with health is there, this passion is there, and all of these appointments do have training that occurs with all of these positions. No one that we're appointing is going into these positions dark, even if they have had experience with these positions in the past. And so I do have a lot of confidence that if appointed, Sumaya can, learn more about the details of SHAC and how it fits into UCLA sort of like health network and system more broadly. And I would just look for some more communication with council and transparency with council as you head into that position to just ensure that some of the things that we're mentioning are, being considered in those roles. And so I think that if you're appointed, I would have that confidence. I would just want to see that communication, with council and other student health equity organizations. But additionally, as Tay mentioned, as a transfer, I can also really see your passion for underserved communities. And I'm also really happy to share my staff applications for the Transfer Student Representative's Office, because I also think that we could really benefit from your perspectives and your experiences. But yeah, I would also love to hear from other council members, but thanks to both Cass and Tay for those perspectives, and those are my thoughts.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, do any other council members have any thoughts? I'm also comfortable. Prom?
Yeah, excuse me. Yeah, so I definitely agree with like the sentiments that have been shared previously, and also kind of want to emphasize like the point that Herman made about like there are going to be trainings to orient whoever does end up sitting on this committee. I guess like my question for like either Tay or Breeze, like with knowledge of SHAC, like is it a role whereby it's very much so like you can learn on the job and also like still be just as effective essentially, because I know that's like definitely a concern and like wanting to make sure that like things are done, especially in this coming year, and how tumultuous it's going to be and how important like overall health is going to be. So if like anyone is able to answer that, but that is kind of just like where my mind is at. And like if it is like a position whereby like a person is able to have time to acclimate, I would personally feel comfortable appointing Sumaya to the position. But I don't know if anyone else has thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I personally am comfortable with it. I know that other council members might feel differently, but I just had brought up, the possibility of, people coming back, because if we offered it to someone, we could offer it again. But I just want to kind of hear where everyone else is at. Regardless, I think myself, I sit within committees, so like I feel like I would have a relationship with Sumaya where, we would work together to understand what is going on in SHAC and how we can ensure a safe return to campus, especially with the Delta variant. That's like becoming an issue right now. So yeah, I just want to get a feel for the council. Like, would you guys want her to come back next week? Like, Jane?
I think having her come back and maybe tabling this would be the best option, because I think we want to make sure all of council is comfortable with it before we appoint her. So I think for me, that is what I think would be the best option.
Okay, Carl.
I just wanted to say I feel comfortable with putting her on the committee, or I think whatever and if we reconvene in 2 weeks, whatever she's going to learn in those 2 weeks, she could probably still learn if we voted on her tonight. But I also kind of understand that if we want to wait to see what everyone else, make sure everyone else is comfortable, that's fine too. But that just kind of was my thinking.
Prom?
Yeah, I definitely want to emphasize how much I agree with what Carl's saying, and also I think that if this is a position whereby it can be learned and everything, I think that it doesn't necessarily do anything to kind of wait another 2 weeks essentially to fill the position, unless we're considering other candidates. And I say that because other candidates aren't necessarily getting the same opportunity. And if folks feel not comfortable voting yes, then I think it's just better to vote no, and let the vote occur, so then we can go from there. But I don't know, I'm open to other thoughts.
Yeah, I agree with that, Prom. My only thing is, since we offered the opportunity last week to Luis, I feel like it would be unjust for us not to offer it to Sumaya again. If we are, right? Like, to push that vote. Obviously we don't like to vote straight no in front of everyone right here at council. So, Erman?
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to say that I personally agree with Promise and Carl that I feel comfortable moving forward with the vote tonight. But I also understand why we would want to wait the other 2 weeks, and I would also support that. I would just be curious to know, I know that I mentioned my own hesitations, and I'm also more than welcome to bring those questions back to the table as well in 2 weeks if that's the route that we decide to go. But I think one of the things that I'm wondering from my fellow council members is what other sorts of hesitations might be there, or what other people are sort of thinking about, other than what ARC has shared, if people are comfortable with sharing some of those perspectives, just because I noticed that some other people were comfortable with sort of moving that discussion, and I was curious about where that perspective is coming in from.
Yeah, so maybe people that mentioned tabling, if y'all have any thoughts. Jane?
Yeah, for me, I think it was kind of similar. My concerns were similar to Tay's. I think for tabling, because we did table someone else and give them the opportunity to learn more about it, I feel like what Bruce is saying, it'd be kind of unfair if we didn't do that. Now, I'm not sure what vote is needed for an appointment to approve, but I just feel like I can also see where Carl and Thomas are coming from. I personally would like to table just because I think it gives us more time to talk to them as a council. And I think as a council, we don't get that many opportunities to talk to appointments as a whole, because there's a lot of appointments, and realistically, a lot of them we won't get a chance to talk to before. So that was just my reasoning behind it.
Yeah. Okay, Haley?
Yeah, just pretty much same reasoning. I do feel like more comfortable tabling this, just because like in the same case as Luis, like we decided to table it when he could have like, we could have been like approved him comfortably knowing that he would have done the research in the next 2 weeks. And it's kind of like the same instance here. And so just like for the sake of consistency, I feel like it might be more fair to table it.
So Breeze,
Yes.
since there is an inconsistency in council right now, the diplomatic way to move forward would be to put a vote up of whether or not we should table the vote. Yes means that gets passed and then it gets tabled. No means we move forward with the vote as is, as what was planned tonight. Because I think we're just going around in circles at this point. I don't want to say circles, but everyone has voiced it. But there are clearly two sides. So the most diplomatic way is to move forward with a vote. This would be a suggestion. You don't have to take it, by the way. But move forward with a vote.
It's late. We will definitely vote on it. Awesome. Okay. So can I get all in favor prom?
Yeah, can I say something real quick before we take the vote? I do want to say that like setting the precedent of like tabling and essentially kind of giving people more time, like when other folks did apply for a position, is not necessarily the most equitable way to go about this. And like setting the precedent for it is not necessarily probably what we want to do. And I think especially in the last two, this appointment and the one that we did end up tabling, they were both transfer students who had not been on campus yet. And that is something that in voting for them, taking that into account, because they haven't been on campus yet. They haven't had the resources to be able to see what's going on. But because of that, it's still important to still vote for it, like either vote yes or no, knowing that they still have the opportunity to learn. But taking into account what the committee is. If this was SIOC and CRC, this would be a different conversation. Because in those positions, especially this coming year, it's really important to have people who have been here and who know what's going on to be able to like essentially do the role. So I think it's like really, really important when we vote this and whether what people want to do, but just to keep that in mind, because if we do set this precedent, like it's a precedent essentially. So just food for thought.
Yeah, I agree with that, Prom. I also think that because we take like 20 minutes to do these, if we keep pushing back a lot, like it adds up, and I still have a lot of appointments to make. So it becomes a lot. Pasa?
Yeah, no, I just want to say that I really agree with what Promise has said. I think that, as we go through more of these appointments, it's important that we are consistent in our protocol in doing so. And that when we make decisions to table, we're always making those decisions with the reasoning that, okay, there are cases where we're giving a chance for transfer students because like Erman has said in the chat, a lack of experience doesn't necessarily mean a lack of ability for these appointments. So it's just important that as we move forward, we're having a very consistent protocol, and also like if we deviate, it's for a very like good reason, right? So thank you.
Okay, great. We're gonna do a vote now. Can I get all in favor of tabling this to please raise their hands? Okay, all in favor of moving forward with the vote, please raise your hands. Awesome. I think it's gonna pass through. I see 13 hands, so I'm pretty sure regardless it would have gone through. Great. Okay, so we will be voting tonight then. Okay, can I get a motion, please?
I move to appoint Sumaya to the Student Health Advisory Committee.
Can I get a second, please?
I second.
Erman motions, Promise seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands. Okay, 8. All abstaining, please raise your hands. Natalia, is that an old hand or okay? All against, please raise your hands. Okay, so by a vote of 8 to 0 to 6, does that mean that the appointment does not go through?
No, it's actually 8 to 6 to 0. So 8 approved, 6 rejected, 0 abstained.
So would she go through?
Jessica, is this majority or 2/3? I have to look at the Constitution.
Don't know. That's
Yeah, sorry, I don't know off the top of my head. I can check the bylaws really quick, but I'm not sure because this is a stipended appointment, right?
Correct.
Yeah, let me look at the bylaws really quick and I will drop it in the chat.
So Breeze, my recommendation would be let's hold off. We've got the vote. We are going to come back and let you know if that is been approved or rejected. So let us look that up real quick. But while we're doing that, I think it would be safe for us to continue.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah, so I'm going to be moving back to Jenny because Jenny actually heard back already from the group from earlier today. So Jenny, you have the floor because I know we wanted to vote on BICOM allocations.
Hi, yes, sorry, I know it's really late, but just wanted to bring it up again. So if you forgot, we were going to allocate to one non-USAC entity, and that was going to be Mobile Clinic Project for $990.21. So I heard back from their sole advisor, Pam, and she gave a very positive recommendation, just saying that she's been in contact with the group all year, that they have been following protocols, and that she is actually encouraging volunteers to complete university waivers before attending the site. So just given how strongly Pam seemed to appreciate or to advocate for the group, I just would love to get this passed or not, so I can let the group know as soon as possible.
Awesome. How does council feel? Oh, it's 2/3. Okay. We'll go back to that right now. Yeah, so council, can I get a motion to approve if the 990 or would we like to discuss?
I motion to approve the contingency allocation of $990.21 to non-USAC entity.
Awesome. Can I get a second?
I second.
Who seconded? Sorry.
I think Tay and I did.
Okay. Promise motions, Tay seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands. Okay. I'm missing one hand. Prom, I think it's just yours. Perfect. By a vote of 14 to 0 to 0, the motion passes and contingency funds are approved. Thank you so much for that, Jenny. We really appreciate you.
Thank you so much, guys.
Okay, moving back to Elizabeth.
Well, Breeze, so I just want to jump in real quick. My apologies. It is a 2/3 vote. So at a 2/3 vote, unfortunately, with a vote of 8 to 6 to 0, that would be 8 in support. 8 divided by 14 is 57% of the vote, which is not 2/3 votes, which means that the vote would fail and they would not be appointed.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So apologies, Sumia, for keeping you this long. Yeah. We would love to see you get involved. I know I would love you to be in our office, in my office within Office of the President. So yeah, I will be reaching out to you. Really enjoyed your passion and really sorry this appointment didn't go through, but yeah, I really enjoyed your interview and thank you so much. Okay, great. Moving straight into officer reports, I will go ahead and get started. So great. I've had a couple of meetings. Mostly I've been meeting with presidents from other UCs just to kind of get discussions going around how we want to go about strategizing with police abolition movements across the UCs and what that'll look like this upcoming year. I have I had a couple of have a couple of case hearings this week. I've been preparing for those. Those are like the first ones I'm going to actually be in attendance for. So that's a little exciting but nerve wracking. And yeah, I filmed a video for student affairs. I have another one coming up for This is Bruin Life. And as far as response and recovery task force, so this is a big one. I went to a meeting today. They had canceled the meetings because, you know, we were all thinking that everything was going well. And then recently, you know, the Delta variant became a big issue. So they were kind of discussing about what they're going to be requiring students and whatnot. So they were saying that specifically for international students, what they are planning to do, I asked them about, you know, when they're going to release this information. So they are planning to allow that any student that wants a vaccine will be able to receive it. And you have it's recommended that international students arrive within 2 weeks. Um, the university will be offering housing. So for students, all you would have to worry about is like your food, but you have up to 6 weeks in advance to arrive. And this is specifically for international students or any student really that wants to receive the vaccine. The university will be covering housing if you have a housing issue. So I thought like that was kind of a good thing because I know that that was a big issue in terms of like international students having to arrive earlier and having to pay that extra amount. So the university will be covering it. That information should be coming out soon. I asked them like that they disperse it, but when that information does become available, there will be a message sent out from the Dashu Center. And this applies to all students. All students have up to 6 weeks in advance to arrive. Again, they would have to pay for food, but I asked, you know, specifically, I asked them, how long do you think it would take for like a student if they want to like attend Bruin Bash, right? Or attend like all the fun events that we have 0 week. And it is recommended that a student arrive 2 weeks ahead. And hopefully that is sent out in the messaging. But yeah, that is something I will plan to look over. And if anyone would like to discuss a bit more, feel free to let me know. They also discussed that, you know, originally the plan was not to test all students. But now with the Delta variant, there is discussion around having all students get tested when they arrive. That is ourselves included. So yeah, and then we just kind of discussed what daily symptom monitoring will look like for students. And, you know, kind of that discussion around if a student goes onto campus, how will they know that they need to be ensuring that? So we kind of discussed, and I brought up, you know, potentially working with the academic senate to see if there's some sort of messaging that can be distributed through CCLE for any students that have in-person learning. Yeah, and other than that, I've had a couple of meetings with a few of the chair people from different MOs, kind of seeing where we want to align ourselves this upcoming year in regards to, you know, all of the issues going on within CPO right now. And, you know, as I learn more, I will continue to communicate with everyone in the council in regards to what we should be doing. So, yeah, thank you so much. I will pass it off to Cass.
I'll keep mine brief because it's like 9. But so I've been doing like appointment review committee interviews. On Sunday, we did an interview for campus programs committee. And then within my office, we just had our first like meeting, I think like early July. And that went really well. It was very exciting to see like all the directors. So right now, All directors are working on their business plans for the upcoming school year and the summer so that they can get started on their projects. And also on top of this, I've been connecting with student organizations to talk about like different collaborations within the IVP office and how we can support them and all the advocacy work that they do. Yeah, I'll pass it on to Sarah.
Thank you, Cass. Hi, everyone. So first, just want to start with some news on the statewide level. So there's actually a Senate proposal that was unfortunately passed recently that's going to be cutting the number of non-resident students at the UCs to 10%. And specifically, they are targeting UC Berkeley, UCLA, UC San Diego. And this is kind of just the legislation's, yes, out-of-state phobia. This is the legislator's response to a lot of frustration from California constituents with paying taxes and having their children not get acceptance into UCs that they want to get into. And so it's essentially the state is compensating the UCs financially X amount of money per out of non-resident student that does not have a seat, and it doesn't add up to the amount of tuition at all. So we are in a deficit in a way. And so it's really unfortunate that it did pass, but we are working at the statewide level to do everything we can to support our non-resident students. And I will keep you updated on our efforts as we figure out what can be done to address this. Moving into some other news, there's a tuition hike coming up. And it is going to be at the upcoming Regents meeting this July. And we had a strategy, yes, I am a ball of sunshine today. We had a strategy session with all of the EVPs, and I would really encourage you all to sign this petition that I will drop after my updates, just to show the Regents that we are not interested in this tuition hike. They're kind of marketing it, as I will talk about later in the resolution, as a cohort-based tuition hike where it doesn't affect current students, and that we'll know exactly how much our tuition will increase year by year, but we don't want our tuition to increase, period. So I'll definitely be sharing more information on what we can do about that. I want to share also the student advocate to the Regents application, which is due on July 15th. You'll be able to speak at the upcoming board meeting about issues, including the tuition hike. And this meeting is scheduled for July 20 to 22nd. It will be a teleconference, so no travel is required. And I will also send out more information about how to provide public comment if you or your offices are interested in speaking against this tuition hike. I'm sorry I didn't have any more exciting, fun news, but excited to speak about the resolution later today. And I will pass it.
AAC?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. So as for my office, I've been training my staff, and I've also been continuing to take on academic dishonesty cases, and I'm working with our student advocate board director to train student advocates for the upcoming year. And then Jane and I had a meeting with Suzanne Seplow, who's currently overseeing the CAE as an interim person, and Quinn, who's one of the leaders of DSU, was also in that meeting, and we discussed Seplow's plans for CAE and how she plans to support students registered with the CAE in the upcoming year under her leadership. And then she stated that she did want to listen to student voices and advocate for them and help us advocate for academic accommodations in her capacity with this role. And she also said that she wants to learn more about the new policies and guidelines of CAE because a lot has changed since 2016, which is when she last oversaw the CAE. And she did seem open to working with us and agreed to attend our biweekly meetings with the CAE. So I think that's like a step in the right direction. And then during that bi-weekly meeting that we had with the CAE and with SEPLO, which took place last week, we presented a list of initiatives that me and Jane and members of DSU are hoping to accomplish this year. As it like pertains to accessibility for disabled students. And we did a preliminary discussion of how we can go about accomplishing these things together, which we asked for things like an increase in CAE staffing, reforms in accommodations, and the reversal of the priority enrollment decision, anti-ableism training for CAE and student affairs, and like Bruin-casted lectures, among other things. So we've been scheduling a lot of separate follow-up meetings to discuss each of these initiatives more in depth. We also talked about some documents that were written by the CAE that they're planning to send out to students regarding disability-related COVID concerns for fall 2021. And we gave some feedback on those. So those letters basically outline the different types of documentation that disabled students will need to get from their medical providers if they're asking for specific accommodations during fall 2021. So like mask exemption requests, or if they can't get vaccinated for health reasons. The documents also outline different academic options that students can pursue if they're worried about contracting COVID. So like taking a remote course load, or like a reduced course load, and also like requesting note-taking services, which we'll be discussing in another meeting. And then the CAE also said in the letter that remote opportunities for in-person courses will only be considered on a case-by-case basis with medical documentation when deemed to be academically appropriate, and only after other mitigation measures have been determined to be insufficient. So yeah, so remote may not be deemed reasonable for all types of courses, and it will be determined on a course by course basis, just reading off of the document. And they also said that remote learning might not be feasible for a long-term thing because of like the drastic difference between in-person learning and remote learning. That being said, I also went to a meeting about the possibility of implementing a hybrid classroom called like a high flex classroom. I talked about this a little bit during last meeting, and they're talking about implementing this within the next few years, if not during this next academic year, to allow for remote learning for those students who can't make it in person. It's still very much in the early discussion phase, and we're having another meeting soon, but there's talk about like experimenting with this type of classroom within the law school and seeing if it's a viable option for all UCLA schools, and then gathering data to see if we're like good with moving forward for implementing it as like a long-term thing. But yeah, sorry that was so long. But yeah, and if you have any questions or if you want to see any of the documents, feel free to message me.
Period. Love AAC. Anyways, great. Moving straight into admin. Jessica.
I don't really have any updates, but I'll just share something quick from SGA. Just a reminder that as you all are hiring office staff, to make sure that you're filling out the hiring paperwork, and then as the elected officer, you would be the person signing off on the forms to approve. And then usually they need to go to Breeze then for the second signature as president. So just a reminder on that. And you know, if there's signatures missing, Irma will email you and send you the form to sign. So don't worry too much about it, but just as a heads up to make sure that as you start to hire students for your staff, just to be aware that they'll have to fill out all the hiring paperwork as well and go through the HR verification process and all of that.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessica. George.
Hi everyone. Happy 9:38 to you all on this fine Monday evening. Big update. I'm pretty sure y'all heard, but the Alumni Association did vote in its new members for the board. These are the folks who make some of the bigger long-term strategic thinking and plans of the UCLA Alumni Association. And surprisingly, and not surprisingly, Ann Wang, who is the new board president of the Alumni Association, is also the first Asian American president of the Alumni Association. So that's crazy and it's amazing. She's super awesome entrepreneur. She's a Forbes 30 under 30 entrepreneur and a creative strategist. So if you want to connect with her, please do so. If you want an introduction, I can also do that as well. She's super dope, and I'm doing well. But that's it for me as the alumni rep.
Awesome. Thank you, George. Josh.
Hey friends, no real big update from me, just that the university is following the COVID variant, as many have been discussing, and making sure that it is still safe to move forward with in person. I think the plan is still to move forward with it. And we're really excited about that. My team is in the process of planning Trooper and Welcome and working with a lot of different entities. We'll be reaching out. We're already working with Soul Promise about Bruin Bash and making sure that all gets onto the schedule. So we're really excited and hopeful as we move forward. So let's keep the positivity going.
Yeah, I was like, we really need Bruin Bash. I need Bruin Bash. Orlando.
Hello, everyone. Just one update today. Just a reminder that CAC application is coming up next month. I don't have that date, but just encourage all the groups to sit down and meet with their sole advisor. That's usually the number one reason why a lot of these applications get in late or delayed or not even accepted. But yeah, that's the only update I have tonight.
Thank you, Orlando. Fernando. Thank you.
Thanks, Fernando.
That's a subtle play, begging people to send him photos.
And that's only for USAC members, right, Fernando? Nice.
Oh, sorry. Okay, Patty.
Patty's not here tonight.
Oh, okay, awesome. Yay. Okay, great. So we're done with admin, moving straight into old business. Prom, you have the floor.
Thank you, everyone. Yeah, so this is just a vote on what Maya and I brought to council last week in our request to essentially utilize the funds that were left over in the Bruin Bash budget this past year towards Bruin Bash this coming year, instead of it going into general surplus. And the reason for that is because essentially inflation and overall costs for the event does go up, and also due to this is Bruin Life and other events not occurring in person, all of these costs are going to be incurred solely by us. So the funds that are allocated in the Bruin Bash fee itself is not enough to, it's not even nearly enough to put on the entirety of Bruin Bash or Enormous Activities Fair. And the importance of these events this coming year is astronomical, I think. And I hope that you guys also feel the same. And these funds weren't able to be used for what they were purposed for this past year. And I think purposing them for that this year is the best move, considering that we're finally going to be able to utilize them properly or more effectively and in person. So yeah, and if Maya wants to add anything as well.
Yeah, I think that Promise said everything really well, so I don't have much to add, but yeah, I just wanted to emphasize that, sorry, I have a really bad cough, but I wanted to emphasize that because the funds last year weren't really used for their like set purpose. And this is a super unique situation in which we aren't able to necessarily finance Bruin Bash in the way that we would have in the past, and also inflation over the past 2 years. I just want to emphasize that I think it just really makes sense for us to restrict these funds from last year to go towards funding Bruin Bash this year.
Awesome. Thank you, Maya. And I personally agree with that sentiment, but I think, is this a vote? Josh?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Let me get a motion then. Can I get a motion, please?
Before we motion, Jessica, this is finance. So this is a question really for you or Patty about the vote for this. Those funds do need to be voted to be carried over, correct?
Yeah, so basically those funds, once they cross over to August 1, they're included in the surplus funds. So essentially, yeah, you all would need to vote to be able to have that amount used for Bruin Bash this year. But I think the question would be, I don't know if Promise or Maya have that number handy. I don't. We can find that out if you don't have it handy, but I think it might be the most clear to articulate the amount that you're trying to reserve for Bruin Bash, just so it's very clear what the funds are.
Yeah, I do. I'm going to pull it up real quick.
Awesome. And then yeah, it basically, you know, when we deal with your carryover funds, also known as surplus, usually early in the year, like sometime during summer, Vong will provide a number of anticipated surplus that council can decide to utilize before the full number is ready. And that just allows more flexibility in putting your programs on earlier in the academic year. So, you know, these funds that would be available, they can be, you know, included in that process so that you have access to them during the summer. You don't have to wait till, you know, mid-fall when we usually have the full surplus figure ready.
Okay, so, but we do vote on it right now, right?
You do. I just wanted to clarify. Promise is totally right. Sorry, Promise. I just wanted to make sure we were doing it right. You are correct. But we will need an amount that you want to vote in on us if you have that number.
Yeah, the amount that's left over in the budget is $70,000 and not $70,009.84. And I will put it in the chat.
Okay, awesome. Can I get a motion, please?
I move to reallocate $70,009.84 from Bruin Bash last year to restricted surplus for Bruin Bash this year.
Can I get a second?
I second.
Jane motions, Emily seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands.
I have a quick question. Would I abstain from this vote?
No, you can vote, right?
Yeah, I
Okay,
promise
conflict.
you can vote because it's a general, though this is not a conflict of interest because you don't, your office does not benefit. This is to benefit the general student body.
Thank you.
Awesome. By a vote of 14-0 to 0. There you go. The motion passes and the additional funds, or yeah, the remaining funds from last year are approved for Bruin Bash. Yay. Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. Moving straight into new business. Sarah, you have the floor.
Okay, awesome. Can you remind me, Breeze, real quick what the process is for resolutions?
Yeah, so you could share the screen or Cass would share the screen. It's up to you. And you can just, go through it, summarize it. Yeah, then we would vote on it.
Okay, awesome. So it's a little bit of a lengthy one. So I will drop the link in the chat first so you can read along at your own pace, but I'm just gonna go through and screen share if I can, and kind of walk you all through each section. All right, can you all see my screen?
Yeah.
Thank you, Jane. Okay. So feel free to tune me out if you're reading through it on your own, but essentially what this resolution does is just express that we strongly oppose the UC's cohort-based tuition hike. This tuition plan was first proposed in 2019 and was actually going to be voted on in 2020, March 2020, but was tabled due to the onset of the pandemic. So the regents have brought it back for the July Regents meeting, and they are going to be voting in to enact a multi-year cohort-based tuition plan that is going to be increasing fees for each incoming class of students across all the campuses beginning in fall 2022, which means that all current students will not be affected, but this is essentially what is called a forever hike, or the tuition hike to end all tuition hikes, because it increases every year. And at the rate exactly of, so it starts off with like 5%. So it's like X amount plus the rate of inflation. So for example, the first year is like 2% plus the rate of inflation, and then it goes to 1.5 plus the rate of inflation. So eventually it does stabilize at 3.1% in the 2026 to 2027 academic year. I do want to note here that this is an overestimation of the inflation rate because it fluctuates between 2 to 3% year to year. So by the time we get to 2026, non-resident tuition will have increased by about $8,700, and resident tuition will have increased by about $2,500. And the regents have done so knowing that student representatives on their working groups, including last year's EVP and UCSA President Aiden Aristossingham, have expressed opposition to this. And they have instead chosen to frame this as a return to aid financial package, since a portion of the funds that they raise do have to go back into financial aid. However, it really won't have any net positive financial impact for low-income students because they're still keeping the self-help contribution at $10,000. So essentially, all of the funds that are really generated towards financial aid are just going to go towards covering this increase. So it's kind of circular logic in this sense. And this will increase the burden on students who aren't eligible for Cal Grant or for some other reason are left out of the financial aid system. So right there, the return to aid reasoning just falls through. Also, it's here, this paragraph kind of just goes through how it's tied to CPI, and the increased rate of tuition will continue to raise each year as inflation goes on. And the regents know this. They are quoted in various meeting minutes expressing how this model would affect the UC's equity goals, especially those of affordability and accessibility. on all three fronts. So like non-traditional students, out-of-state students, resident students, just mainly because inflation is increasing faster than our like wages are increasing. And it really just discriminates against students who aren't able to finish their degree in standard four-year model because they're only protected for 6 years, guaranteed that their like tuition isn't going to increase. And again, kind of bullying our non-residents here because their tuition has already increased by 8,000 in just the past decade alone. What this kind of plays into is our accessibility issues and affordability issues, because a lot of students will look at the tuition and may not be able to enter our system, and they'll have to go into other institutions, which are just as good and just as reasonable, but we really want to make sure that here at the UC, it's not an issue of affordability any more than it has to be. And then last thing I just want to end off with here is just it doesn't have any form of accountability. So they haven't made any plans to assess whether or not the cohort-based model is going to be more effective than the current standard model. And there's just no plan to end. It's intended to increase each and every year. And so what I kind of wanted to end off with in our resolution is that we take a strong stance against this cohort-based tuition model, and like acknowledge how this would really disproportionately impact low-income students and students from marginalized communities, and that we should instead focus our efforts on the newly introduced Pell Grant Preservation and Expansion Act to double the maximum award of the federal Pell Grant. I just believe that this is more effective than the return to aid model, which involves raising tuition in order to increase financial aid, which is ultimately going to go back to covering the cost of the raised tuition. So yeah, I would just love if you guys would join me in opposing this tuition hike and urging the regents to vote no on the upcoming Board of Regents meeting. And yeah, hopefully I explained it in a way that made sense. I know that was a lot of information, so I'd be happy to take any questions or comments or suggestions here. Yeah, Emma, go ahead.
Hey, I just wanted to say, like, I'm in full support of this resolution. Thank you for working on this, Sarah. And I also wanted to add the fact that this particular like cohort-based tuition hike model, as like Sarah stated and wrote, it very much negatively affects non-resident students by disproportionately like raising the burden on them. And not only does this cohort-based tuition hike negatively affect low-income students in California, it also has the capacity to price out students who are out of state and international, especially since I'm sure like Natalia can speak to this, but like international students are required to be able to pay the full price of tuition just to go to university here. So that'll price them out a lot. And also just with raising the sticker price of tuition for out-of-state students in general, can have a bad like equity issue as well.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. And I do want to note that FSC last year did a lot of great work to advocate against this model. So thank you for your partnership and advocacy in that sense, Emily. Herman?
Yeah, I also want to iterate my very strong support for this resolution. Emily covered a lot of the points that I wanted to say, and I just wanted to mention that a lot of the legislation that is coming out of the broader UC right now is working in tandem, right? Like we can see how what the UC is has passed for non-resident students is intertwined with how it's increasing its tuition model, which will undoubtedly be intertwined with policies to come in the future. And I think that's one of the reasons why it's very important for us to vote on this resolution and to vote on similar legislation that it really strongly positions us against stuff like this that is truly unequitable for a lot of students that could benefit from bringing in the UC. So yeah, thank you so much, Sarah, for your work. Yeah, again, I think this is something we should all be really conscious about supporting.
Yeah, thank you so much for your support. Any other questions? Okay, then do I pass this back to Breeze for vote? Breeze?
Wait, sorry?
Do I pass this back to you for a vote?
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much. Okay, so I might be blanking right now on like resolutions, but I think that it would simply be a motion. So yeah. Can I get a motion, please?
I move to pass
It's 10 o'clock.
Sure is.
this resolution.
Can I get a second?
A second.
All right, Breeze, really quick. Jane, do you mind just saying the title of the resolution in your motion, just so it's clear for the minutes?
Yes. Sarah, can you put the full title in the chat again? Sorry. Okay, I move to approve a resolution to oppose the UC cohort-based tuition hike.
Can I get a second?
A second.
Jane motions, Emily seconds. All in favor, please raise your hands. Awesome. By a vote of 14-0 to 0, the motion passes and the resolution is approved. And thank you so much, Sarah, for all your advocacy in that. We really appreciate you doing all of that. Awesome. Thank you. Great. Last thing of the meeting. Momina, you have the floor.
Thank you, Breeze. This agenda item is to approve the updated CS Transpo Fund guidelines for the 2021 to 2022 year. I'm not sure on the exact way that these are approved, but I believe it's just a consent item vote. So I'll give a bit of context on it, and then if anyone has any thoughts, or I think it's only brought to a vote if someone opposes it. So this is a new funding body through CSC, kind of similar to SFS, that funds transportation for students doing service, and it's a summer application, so it's kind of meant to go alongside CAC annual to allow orgs to not put all of their put the majority of their application for CSC annual on Transpo and like lessen that burden, and it includes more things that other funding apps normally don't, like Uber reimbursements, gas reimbursements, things like that. And it ran actually during spring quarter last year and was successful at funding a bunch of orgs that were doing either socially distanced service or dropping off supplies. Shout out to my finance director, Rashika, and Fernando too for finalizing this for the summer. But yeah, does anyone have any questions or anything on it? I think it just needs to be, I'm not sure on the exact way it's approved, but that one, you know.
Is it just a consent item?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, if it's just a consent item, is there any opposition from the council? Going once, going twice? If not, thank you so much, Momina. We appreciate you for looking into that. Sounds like it's gonna make a huge difference. Thank you. Great. And woo, with that, I adjourn this meeting at 10:02 p.m. Awesome.
The recording has stopped.
And good